Excellencies, dear guests, on behalf of the Center for Policy Dialogue, I extend a very warm welcome to you all to this dialogue on catalyzing social dialogue in the RMG sector of Bangladesh on the occasion of the 4th anniversary of the Rana Plaza Tragedy, which took place on 24th April 2013. The tragedy took more than 1,200 lives and left more than 2,400 people injured. As you know that after the Rana Plaza incident, CPD took an initiative under the leadership of Professor Rehman Sovan, chairman of CPD, in order to monitor the follow-up activities with regard to compensating the victims and also for improving the safety of workers in factories. You may recall, CPD set up a Rana Plaza monitoring initiative along with 15 non-state organizations and several eminent people of the country. As part of the initiative, CPD undertook various activities including publishing reports on the progress of the initiatives taken by the government, BGME, development partners, and buyers consortium, and others also. And CPD also organized a number of dialogues on this. The partnership of the Rana Plaza Monitoring Initiative was continued for 2 years, but CPD continued to carry out its work on Rana Plaza and follow-up initiatives. One of the major objectives of the initiative, as you know, was to bring the overall improvement of the RMG sector. We observe that accidents happen in factories, workers die and get injured. We see a few media reports and then afterwards everything is forgotten. So CPD's objective was that people who have been the victim of the tragedy should not be forgotten, and secondly also that this type of incidents should never happen again. Therefore, the issues should be kept alive and corrective measures should be undertaken afterwards, on a continuous basis. Following the Rana Plaza, during the last 4 years, a number of measures have been undertaken in collaboration with the Bangladeshi entrepreneurs, buyers, and also following the Rana Plaza incidents during the last 4 years, a number of initiatives were undertaken by the Bangladeshi entrepreneurs, buyers, and also development partners and members of the society as a whole in order to ensure safety of factories and workers. And undoubtedly, the compliance measures have helped to bring more credibility of Bangladeshi RMG sector. Significant improvement has been done in factories. However, this is an ongoing process and not a one-off initiative. Compliance measures are required continuously for a sustainable growth of the sector. Also, compliance is not only physical but also has to be social. The relationship among various stakeholders in the industry is crucial to have a productive sector. In order to achieve higher productivity, greater competitive capacity, and better physical and social compliance, there is a need for further transparency and interaction among the members and stakeholders of the industry. A lot has been done, but there is also a number of unfinished agenda to transform the industry. Today's dialogue will look into one of the important aspects of this unfinished agenda, that is a social dialogue among various stakeholders of the industry. We are very happy that Mr. Mikhail Schipper, Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Labor and Employment, has joined us today as the chief guest. He, in fact, has been a constant source of support to CPD's initiative in undertaking various activities regarding the RMG-related issues. We'd like to thank Mr. Shipper once again for his kind support. We have been also receiving unconditional cooperation from BGMA in our journey. They have extended support in providing information and also by guiding us in CPD's new study, which has been taken a year back. We are happy that Mr. Mahmood Hassan Khan Babu, Vice President BGMA, has joined us today as the special guest. And we also have a discussant. Initially, we had Mr. Amirul Haq Amin, President, National Garments Workers Federation. Unfortunately, he is unwell and not able to join today with us. We have discussant Mr. Chaudhary Ashikul Alam, Secretary General, Bangladesh Trade Union সংস্থা. And we have been joined by a number of distinguished guests in the audience. We express our deep appreciation for your kind support. The keynote presentation will be made by Dr. Khondokar Gholam Muazzam, Research Director of CPD, who has been working on the RMG sector for long. We also have Mr. Srinivas V. Reddy, Country Director of International Labour Organization. In fact, today's dialogue is being organized in collaboration with ILO, and under a project which they are undertaking. It's on promoting social dialogue and harmonious industrial relations in Bangladesh ready-made garments industry, supported by the government of Denmark and Sweden. We like to thank Mr. Reddy for this support. And today's session will be chaired by Professor Hema Sobhan, Chairman of CPD, and our moderator for today's session is Dr. Debapriyo Bhattacharya, Distinguished Fellow, CPD. Before I hand over the microphone to Professor Hema Sobhan, I would like to request Mr. Reddy to make his introductory remarks. Thank you.
Respected Chairperson, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to address such a distinguished audience at this event to mark the 4th anniversary of the Rana Plaza tragedy. 24th of April 2013 marks the day when 1136 workers lost their lives. In remembering this terrible day, we must also not forget that 117 workers who perished in the Tazreen factory on 24th November 2012, as well as those who have died in other workplace accidents. It gives us some measure of comfort to know that these workers did not perish in vain, for their deaths have led to a sustained national and global effort to prevent such catastrophes from happening in Bangladesh again. In this regard, Government of Bangladesh, workers and employees organizations, and the international partners must all be commended for their support and commitment to facilitate significant improvements in factory safety. The topic for this 4th anniversary is very pertinent and timely. With the support of Government of Sweden and the Denmark, ILO on 11th of December 2016 launched a project that aims to promote social dialogue and harmonious industrial relations in Bangladesh ready-made garment industry. We are fortunate to have the distinguished excellencies and colleagues from the international partners. As you all know, for the Workplace Improvement Program itself has been making a significant contribution to the efforts of Government of Bangladesh and employers and workers being implemented by the ILO, and this is supported and funded by the governments of Canada, the Netherlands and the United Kingdom. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the governments of the Canada and Netherlands and UK for their unstinted support in making this program and contribution to Bangladesh ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh. As we are moving into a very important arena of social dialogue and labor rights, the project that ILO has launched, under which this particular event is convened today, I would like to thank governments of Sweden and Denmark for their crucial support. I would like to recognize that the $28 billion garment industry, which is created through the joint efforts of some 2,000 employers and over 4 million workers. This is a very important perspective that we need to recognize. This inclusive and job-rich growth has formed the foundation for much of Bangladesh's economic and social development. Moving forward, we see the need for a transformative change in the relationships and partnerships upon which the industry is built. As the recent labor unrest in Ashulia highlighted, there is a need to move from a situation of mistrust and miscommunication between workers and employers to a high quality partnership where they share goals and objectives. Enhanced social dialogue can help in this regard. The tripartite constituencies have each expressed their support for this project and their commitment to ensuring its successful implementation. I also would like to refer to the Sustainability Compact, the parties to which are Government of Bangladesh, EU, Canada, the USA, and ILO. One of the important pillars of the Sustainability Compact is to promote respect for labor rights. The first being the workplace safety, ensuring structural integrity and fire safety of the ready-made garment sector. Second and most important is also being the respect for labor rights. I think it's very topical that we are discussing today the social dialogue as an important pillar of the Sustainability Compact in furtherance of the ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh. We all recognize that social dialogue has many benefits. It provides a tool to build trust and inclusion and to reduce the risk of labor unrest. By providing all social partners with an opportunity to engage in the decisions that shape their society, social dialogue can help to constructively reduce inequalities. I would like to draw your attention to the 2030 Agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Goal 8, which refers to the three critical components of inclusive economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work. This is so much relevant to Bangladesh as the country is passing through a critical transition to middle-income country. It is the right time to pay full attention to all three aspects of this goal. Embracing and institutionalizing social dialogue is a crucial element for shared prosperity, inclusive growth, and harmonious society. Let us for a moment consider what social dialogue practically means for each of the three constituencies, employers, workers, and the governments. From a business perspective, social dialogue, especially in the workplace, is economically profitable. The benefits could include harmonious workplace leading to increased productivity, more stable and secure supply chains, better conditions for long-term planning and risk management, reduced risk of disruption to business operations, stronger brands, and not least more committed workers. Social dialogue brings benefits to workers through providing them with a say in the decision-making process to determine employment terms and working conditions, leading to shared creation and distribution of prosperity. Through social dialogue, workers are provided with a mechanism through which to express their concerns, organize and participate in the decisions affecting their lives, and to promote equal opportunity and treatment for all women and men. From a government perspective, social dialogue creates a firm basis for sound industrial relations, shared responsibility for economic growth, and a basis to achieve social equity and inclusive and harmonious society. Ladies and gentlemen, steps in this right direction have already been taken. Government's recent establishment of the RMG Tripartite Consultative Committee, which the ILO is committed to supporting through Social Dialogue project, is an important example of this. This RMG TCC provides a firm basis for structured and constructive engagement between the tripartite constituencies. This is good not only for the RMG sector but for the country as a whole. I would like to refer to the recent International Labour Conference conclusions, ILC 2016, paid particular attention to key conclusions on freedom of association and collective bargaining in Bangladesh. The ILC recommended that Bangladesh revise the Bangladesh Labour Act, export processing zone law, and ensure smooth registration of the trade unions and timely and effective resolution of the unfair labour practices. These four conclusions are critical aspects of promoting labour rights and ensuring social dialogue in Bangladesh. ILO's expectations for this structure, the TCC, is that it will consider in a frank but constructive way measures to grow the RMG sector while ensuring that workers' rights are protected and enhanced. This would require discussions on policy and legislation to promote freedom of association, improve dispute resolution, as well as measures to improve working conditions for all workers and especially women. Lastly, I would like to mention, let us also recognize these efforts to build a tradition of social dialogue in the RMG sector as a further legacy of the Rana Plaza Tragedy. Giving workers a voice unlocks increased creativity and innovation. It contributes to improved working conditions and is fundamental to increasing productivity. In other words, social dialogue is good for business. ILO remains fully committed to supporting these efforts of the tripartite constituents, government, employers and workers' organizations to strengthen the partnership for the betterment of all. Thank you for your kind attention.
Excellencies, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me join our Executive Director, Dr. Famida Khatun, and the Head of ILO, Mr. Srinivas Reddy, in welcoming all of you. The first thing I wanted to mention as the moderator of the session, and with the permission of the Chair, Professor Reman Soban, the founding Chairman of CPD, that the language we are going to use will be language of choice. যার যেটা যে ভাষায় বলার ইচ্ছা সেটাতেই বলতে পারবেন, কিন্তু your choice of language is limited to two, Bengali and English, unfortunately. I wish I could do, I look at the Canadian High Commissioner, think of French, but I think in this case we will have to satisfy with that. বাংলা এবং ইংরেজিতে যার যেটা পছন্দ সেটা বলবেন, আমি চেষ্টা করব দুই ভাষাতেই পরিচালনা করার জন্য. I will try to use both languages as we proceed. So I do not want to give any more introduction. The introduction has been given. খুব ভালো প্রস্তাবনা এখানে দেওয়া হয়েছে আমাদের এক্সিকিউটিভ ডাইরেক্টর এবং আইএলওর প্রধানের পক্ষ থেকে, যে সামাজিক সংলাপের বিষয়টিকে কেন আজকে আমরা এখানে আলোচনাতে তুলে নিয়ে এসেছি। বাংলাদেশে রানা প্লাজা উত্তর আজকে চতুর্থ বার্ষিকীতে এসে আমরা আশা করছি যে তাদের যে জীবন এবং ক্ষয়ক্ষতি আমরা গেছে সেটা নিষ্ফল হবে না, এবং এইটাকে সিপিডির পক্ষ থেকে ধরে রাখার জন্যই আমরা ধারাবাহিকভাবে এই আলোচনা করছি, এবং আজকে আমরা সামাজিক সংলাপের গুরুত্বকে ধরে নেওয়ার চেষ্টা করব। আমি আর কোনো প্রারম্ভিক কথা না বলে আজকের মূল প্রবন্ধ যিনি উপস্থাপন করবেন আমাদের সিপিডির গবেষণা পরিচালক ডক্টর খন্দকার মোয়াজ্জেম হোসেন। Without much ado, now I would like to invite our Research Director of CPD, Dr. Khondokar Ghulam Moazzam, who has been devoting a substantial amount of our time into this particular area to present his keynote address, which specifically focuses on a study relating to social dialogue. So, Muazzam, you have your time now. If you can finish it before 20 minutes, it will be excellent, but will be see it with flexibility. Thank you. Because given the presence of all these people, we'll have to make space for them to have a dialogue. Please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Moderator. In fact, the presentation title, if you noted, is that Strengthening Social Dialogue Mechanism Under Weak Enabling Environment, Case of Ready-Made Garment Sector of Bangladesh. That is the title of my presentation. And my team, who actually actively work for this study, is Mr. Abir Khondokar, Marzuka Radia, and Shahjan Ali. I appreciate their effort for conducting this study. And in this context, I would like to acknowledge the guidance we received from Professor Rehman Sobhan, Chairman CPD, and various kinds of suggestions we received from Dr. Devapriya Bhattacharya and Professor Mustafizur Rahman, distinguished fellows of CPD, to conduct this study. In fact, the study, the presentation will be of two parts. Part one, we like to actually briefly present you regarding the post-Rana Plaza initiatives, what was happened in last 1 year. That is the first part of our presentation, but that will be very brief. And afterwards, we will go extensively on social dialogue issues. We have collected data, particularly scanning newspaper reports for last 4 years, and try to find out the reasons for labor unrest and what are the possible alternate solutions of those unrest that we like to present. Along with the other traditional approach for solving those things will be the focus of the second part of my presentation. I think over the last 1 year, if we notice, is that somehow the victims have been integrated or they incorporated in the day-to-day life. For good reasons, or for they are unable to do so, or they accept the hardship that is there to them. And this has happened because a part of them receive financial support, most of them receive financial support, but those supports were found to be somehow not adequate, particularly for the injured workers that we have recently noticed. And another important thing is that a good number of these injured workers are still unemployed. So that is another concern with regard to the victims. And we have collected data over telephone interview from 15 injured workers, and we found that out of these 15 workers, 12 workers are still receiving treatment over the last 1 year, and for that treatment they have to spend a good amount of money every month, around 3,500 taka per month they have to spend, which in year round it was around 40,000 taka. So that's quite a substantial amount of money they have to spend for their treatment. But that amount is not sufficient enough that they receive from the Rana Plaza Trust Fund or various kinds of support that they received. This is because the newer kinds of challenges that they receive, they need to spend a lot for these kinds of treatment, and while they stay very far from the nearby locality of Dhaka, where these kinds of facilities are being provided by different organizations. So that's an issue of the injured workers. How to actually provide them adequate medical support is an important issue here. And we have actually presented a table about their current status, financial status, and what were there before they have faced the Rana Plaza incidents. And we have received information from various organizations who provide support to the victims, like the CRP, BRAC, ActionAid, and Gonoshastro Kendro. They have provided, for last 1 year, provided various kinds of medical support to injured workers in the form of orthodontic medical care, therapeutic care, medication support, then sociological training, then psychosocial counseling. So these kinds of support they have provided to a good number of injured workers for last 1 year. And also these organizations also provided support to these victims in different forms of livelihood development, where they provided support of training for entrepreneurship development, seed money for initiating business. Those have been provided to them. Along with them, BGMA found to provide support to 67 orphans of Rana Plaza victims, where they spend around 24 lakh taka every year. But despite those initiatives and effort, we found that there are a good number of victims who are out of reach of these provisions, and those victims need to be identified and need to be assessed their assets, their needs, and thereby need to be provided their support to the medical treatment related costs, and as well as livelihood support for self-employment. So those are necessary for these for the victims of the Rana Plaza. Apart from the victims related issues, a major initiatives and which have been continuing, and a good number of progress happened in case of the remediation works of ready-made garment factories. We found that the Accord and Alliance inspected factories have almost covered 80 to 90% of their electrical and fire related problems, while the physical infrastructure problems have been made up by 40 to 60% of the factories. So that is another part. But out of the Accord and Alliance initiative, there is another initiative which we call the National Initiative, and the progress under the National Initiative factories are rather very slow and quite disappointing. We need to expedite the remediation works in the National Initiative factories, where around 1,549 factories are there. So how to expedite the remediation work of the National Initiative factories is an important question now, and for that we think there is a concrete plan of action need to be prepared by DIFE in order to address their challenges. And so far we found that 61 Accord factories and 72 Alliance inspected factories have completed their remediation works, and around 39 factories through the review process have been closed, and 49 factories have been partially closed for non-compliance. Beside that, Accord and Alliance have severed their ties with 195 factories for lack of considerable progress of cap related works. But what we are requesting to the authority is that they need to examine whether those factories are still in operation or not, and which are the buyers are working with those enterprises is an important thing to look at. And also it is also important thing to find out what are the major reasons for lack of non-compliance of these 195 factories, whether this is constraint of financial resources or lack of incentive due to limited business prospect, or they have a plan to relocate their factories to a newer location. So those are also need to be looked into. For last 1 year, we found that over 1,000 factories have set up safety committees. That's quite a good number. But what we have noticed, and we have identified, that a good number of these safety committees are not yet fully functional. So how to make these safety committees functional is an important aspects that need to be looked at, along with the newer factories to be included in the safety committee initiative. So there are other initiatives called Worker Helpline, Better Work Bangladesh initiatives, where a good number of factories are working under various kinds of activities. But what we are also like to mention here is that apart from the factories who are inspected by Accord, Alliance and National Initiative, there are around 1,000 RMG factories which are rather very small in size, but not under any initiative, and nor do they are member of any association. So what would happen? Those small factories is an important follow-up question to look into. So I think that what need to be done by the DIFE is to update their database, how many of those factories are still in operation, and how to actually address their problems through inspection, and thereby follow-up remediation initiatives is an important follow-up activity we think. We found that Fire Service and Civil Defense Authority has also undertaken various kinds of safety related measures for last 1 year. That is quite appreciated. They have worked on firefighting, prevention, search and rescue issues. They have provided first aid training, provided safety inspection and risk assessment survey. So I think that their activity would have to be expedited and would have to be facilitated through better human resource and better financial support. So overall, our observation regarding this last 1 year initiative on post-Rana Plaza related activities is that victims, particularly those who need support for medical treatment and for rehabilitation, need to be further expedited and need to be institutionalized. And for that, we think that there are long-term support still needed for these injured workers, particularly who are actually staying outside the nearby locality, is an important thing. In this case, I think worker welfare fund could be used, and government also take immediate initiative to complete the preparatory works on universal insurance scheme, so which is under consideration of the government. So that also need to be completed as quick as possible. We think that 2017 and 18 would be very crucial for factory with regard to the factory inspection activities, particularly need to actually set newer strategies for monitoring and inspection during post 2018 period, when the Accord and Align initiative will be over. And for that, I think establishment of the Remediation and Coordination Council, which is an interim management, which should be completed by this year, and what will be their institutional arrangement, and what will be their coordination arrangement with Accord and Alliance in terms of sharing the data and information with regard to monitoring and inspection, and where from the resources come for their activities need to be complete by the next 1 year. I think in this case, I think we have to actually consider a public-private partnership model where the RCC would be the sole authority, where the private sector initiative would actually facilitate the inspection-related works with the directions of the RCC. So those works need to be done in the next 1 year period of time. And DIFA also need to have an action plan to complete the remediation and inspection related works. I think for that they need a huge amount of resources, because these factories which are out of these Accord and Alliance initiatives are mostly small size, and they are subcontract factories and mostly located in the shared buildings. And these factories, if they need to remediate, may need to relocate their factories to newer location. So how to actually facilitate their remediation work is a very important thing to consider. And a rough estimate of the DIFA shows that they need around 6,035 million US dollar for complete all kinds of remediation related works within the for rest of the activities to be done. So these are the overall observation regarding the post-Rana Plaza initiative that has been done over the last 1 year. Our general observation is that next 1 year is very crucial for the remediation and other related works, and I think the Ministry of Labour has active consideration of institutionalizing these kinds of things, and to have a necessary preparation to facilitate the post-Accord and post-Alliance initiatives with a smooth manner. Now the second part, which is related to the thematic study, and as I said, it is focusing on the social dialogue related issues. As it has been mentioned by the ILO Country Director, that Bangladesh has signed the Sustainability Compact with European Union and ILO in 2013, where USA and Canada have been associated later on, where Bangladesh have specifically committed to comply with the social dialogue related initiatives under this compact. There are commitment 1.D, commitment 1.E, and commitment 1.F, where it has mentioned that it will further improve exercise of freedom of association and collective bargaining, and to apply national law at the EPZ. It will provide education and training on fundamental principles and right of workplace safety, and it will provide necessary support to establish better work program and registration of independent trade union, and ensure protection of the unions and their members from anti-union discrimination and reprisals. So these are the very specific commitment Bangladesh made under the Sustainability Compact, and that need to be actually taken care of in the course of work by different organizations. We have noticed that over the last couple of years, a good number of new trade unions have been set up in the ready-made garment sector, and ILO initiated training program on promoting fundamental principles and rights at the work in Bangladesh, and along with that they have a program and social dialogue and industrial relations, under which this dialogue has been conducting. But what is the latest review from the European Union is that although there are progress in other areas are quite appreciable, but the progress regarding workers' rights are not yet been happened as per the expectation. And that is also been reflected in the ILO's last ILO International Labour Conference, where they have mentioned a special paragraph on Bangladesh, and specifically mentioned about enforcement of Labour Act, Then they have mentioned about changes in the EPZ law towards more fuller freedom of association and collective bargaining. They also mention about investigate of all anti-union discrimination and other things, and also request for application of union registration as efficiently as possible. And also the recent incidences in Ashulia in December and follow-up activities raised question about major stakeholders about the progress of industrial relations in the country. So in this context, we think that we need to actually think of that how the things could be expedited in a better way in the coming days with regard to the social dialogue issues as well as industrial relation and factory management. As it has been mentioned earlier, that social dialogue is a very broad concept where it is covered with exchange of information, consultation and negotiation between employers, workers and the government, and they need to have a very good coordination between these two, and that actually gradually culminate the process from exchange of information towards consultation, and finally it will reach to negotiation. But that need to have an adequate enabling environment within the country to enforce these kinds of social dialogue mechanism. And social dialogue mechanism of different kinds. It is not necessarily always, it could be bipartite. It may happen it is not necessary to have a tripartite mechanism all the time. It may happen bipartite, or it may happen tripartite plus, where other stakeholders who have a strong voice regarding workers or the sector may join in this process. So that also need to be taken care of while Bangladesh will facilitate the process. But it could happen in the way that the different kinds of channels of social dialogue could be considered. It may happen between government, labor and management dialogue. It may happen between government and labor dialogue. It may happen between labor and management dialogue, or it may happen between government and employer dialogue. So multiple form of dialogue could be happen and that could be facilitated through this social dialogue process. But what is important and what is the necessary condition to have a good successful results from the social dialogue to have an enabling environment? And for that, the environment includes the respect for and implementation of freedom of association, need for democratic governance at all levels, and legitimacy through representative, transparent and accountable cohesive workers and employers organizations. These are the very three primary requirements in order to get successful results from the social dialogue process. So we have to keep in mind while we actually facilitate social dialogue in the country. Our general observation is that Bangladesh's RMG sector won't actually possess a very strong enabling environment, rather have a weak enabling environment prevails in the country. So under such a weak enabling environment, how to facilitate social dialogue is not very easy, and it is rather very difficult. So we have to consider the alternate options in order to understand that how the process could be facilitated in the longer run. But what is important here is that social dialogue is not a new phenomenon in the context of Bangladesh. These have been prevailed earlier under Workers' Participation Committee, Welfare Committee, national level trade union and federations, factory level trade unions, those are there. Even at this moment, there are as many as 9 tripartite committees who are at least by name are working in the ready-made garment sector. And recently, Ministry of Labour and Employment has formed a new committee, RMG Tripartite Consultative Council, which are also working with these areas of social dialogue. But what we found from different kinds of surveys here is that existing WPCs and existing forms of organizations, though they are partially elected, particularly in the new kinds of participatory committee, found to be a good number of workers mentioned, those are to some extent elected, but not have provided adequate results and adequate services as per workers' expectation. Though they raise various kinds of issues, but the results that they expect from the PCs are not yet being so effective. So that is an important thing to look at. So under such a weak enabling and weak situation of existing format, we have actually analyzed the labor-related unrest that has happened over the last 4 years by scanning the data from the newspapers, and we have categorized them very systematically. If you see the slide here, you will notice that over time the labor unrest has declined. So that is quite a positive indication in the context of labor-related disputes. It was found 2013 198 cases, that has reduced to 115. Perhaps a good number of incidents in 2019 was related to the compensations and other unpaid wages after the Rana Plaza incidents. That's why a good number of incidents happened. Later on, it has declined over time. But what is more important here is that these kinds of incidences are happening more in medium-sized industries and small-sized industries compared to those of the large-sized industries. So we have to understand that what are the inner dynamic or inner changes or inner problems in these kinds of factories which culminate these kinds of problems in these factories. And also interestingly, problems are more found to be in the BGMA factories than in the BKMA factories. Not necessarily this is because the number of membership of there have them large, but we have calculated that and we have considered that ratio and found that still the incidences are somewhat higher in the BGMA factories that need to be taken into account. And very interestingly, incidences are happen more in Dhaka and nearby region, and very less in Chittagong region. We need to know what is there in Chittagong. That's why the incidences are rather less. This is not because of the number of factories are less. We have calculated that even then the number of incidences are less in Chittagong. We need to know what is the reason for less unrest incidents in Chittagong. Very interestingly, we found that not necessarily all kinds of unrest are related to wage. Rather, most of the incidences happen are non-wage related issues, but financial issues like unpaid wages, allowances and bonus are the major problems of unrest there. So that kinds of problems I think could be handled by should be handled by the factories at the factory level. And we have a concrete suggestion regarding that. And also there is a seasonality we found, and this figure in the bottom figure you will see the number of incidences are higher in last 4 years in June and July when the festivals are there during the time of June, before the June and July, and that has related to undue festival bonus and other things that also raise some workers' concerns in the factories. Very interestingly, we found that on 80% of the cases, there was no discussion happen after the incidents. So, but only the 20% cases we noticed there are discussion took place. And the discussion took place mostly less discussion rather take place less in Gazipur region than in other regions. So that is an important thing to look at, why the discussion are taking place less in the factories located in the Gazipur region. We found that factory authority and workers took part in the discussion. That is a good point. But we also found that police is also involved in the discussion process in 37% cases. We have a major observation regarding what should be the role of the police in case of this discussion process, whether police role should be confined with the law and order situation or whether they should take part in the discussion of on labor-related issues. That's an important observation that we actually like to raise here in this observation. We found that the discussion takes more between workers and the factory owners in case of the Narayanganj region, where the BKMA factories are located or the knit factories are located. So that is a major reason why that they have a practice of good discussion between them, where the police presence is rather less. So while the workers and employers can take part in the discussion, that could facilitate the process more, and that could rather create less space for other outside authorities to be involved in the discussion process. So what we found also here is that in case of the size related issues, in small factories police intervention is rather high, while in the large factories workers and the factory management are actually discussed more. So that is an important thing to look at, why the factory management in the small factories couldn't actually take part in the discussion in this process. What is happening here is that while the very few number of cases are being raised in the discussion, very less have been solved and very less are actually finally reached to the arbitration process. But what we appreciate here is that BGMA has play a very active role, and their arbitration process is quite active. Despite that, there is a good number of pending cases at the BGMA, which need to be actually considered, that how to facilitate the arbitration process at the association level. That is an important thing to be looked at. And they have very aptly handled the large-scale factory disputes, as they mentioned through the information that we have sought out from them. We have actually identified the factories from the unrest, and when they have actually lost the petition to the BGMA, and when they have lost the petition to the labor court. And this is the data we have received, and this figure shows that most cases, the time gap between the incidents happen and its arbitration is between 6 months to as high as 2 years. So this time lag need to be reduced in order to actually settle the issues much more quicker. In case of the labor court issues, we identified 4 cases where the incidences happened in 2014. The cases are still pending. That is almost 3 years have passed over in order to actually settle the disputes. So if these kinds of labor courts and arbitration process have been expedited much more quicker, I think that could also make the make others also accountable in order to ensure factory level disputes to be resolved at the factory level. So, we have a good number of observations over our analysis. What we observe is that a large part of incidences are related to the financial matters, but need not necessarily relate to wage. So that is a very quick distinction we like to mention. Not all financial matters are related to wage. So, but financial matters are very much concerned for the workers. And we have distinct to them as wage related and non-wage related financial matters. And there is another good number of incidences we found which are related to the non-financial matters. So our observation here is that these kinds of incidences happen because factory related financial management is poor, or human resource management is rather weak. So if the factories could actually improve their financial management and could improve their human resource management, they could easily handle a good number of unrest related issues that occurred at the factory level or at the national level. So strengthening the financial management, particularly the cash flow management at the factory level, and improve the HR management is very, very important from our observations. We also like to mention here is that there is a spatial dispute distribution. Why incidences are less in Chittagong region, that we also need to know. What are the inner dynamics there that have less incidents happen in the Chittagong region? If you have any insights, I will appreciate that from our side. In any of the incidences, we never mention in the newspaper regarding the participatory committee. Meaning that participatory committees are not so much actually functional in this case. Rather, we found the presence of the police, and as I say to you is that police presence should have to be rather reduced in case of the labor worker related issues, despite the fact that police have a stronger role to play in law and order situation. So we very much appreciate that concern. What is also important here is that none of the report in the newspaper mentioned about the role of the buyers' brands. We think that those buyers and brands who work with these factories, if they have a close eye in the financial management part and the HR management part on a regular basis, these kinds of incidences can be avoided by the factories. So there is a role by the brands and buyers in case of working with the factories while they do their auditing part. So while they do their social auditing and their normal commercial auditing, they have a specific criteria how their financial flow and the cash flow management of the factories and how their worker related, management related practices are there. If those could be practiced well, I think factories could avoid these kinds of incidences at the factory level. We have actually collected a perception from the entrepreneurs based on our observations, and we found that that entrepreneurs are not actually fully against of these worker-related trade unions or the participatory committees. Rather, their position here is that workers' organizations should be formed by the workers within the factories. So that is their point they have raised that they mentioned to us. But they also admit that a good number of factory-related poor management issues need to be solved at the factory level, and that capacity should have to be there within the factory. So, and efficient arbitration can prevent these kinds of incidences that they also mentioned to us. From the worker side, worker representatives also mentioned here is that despite we are actually mentioning that worker factory level management to be strengthened, but there is no inbuilt mechanism within the factory that could actually address these kinds of issues. Even the complaint box system which is available in the factories are not so functional. So there is a complaint box at the factory which found to be not so functional. And HR departments are also not very aptly handling these kinds of complaint very properly, that they also mentioned to us. But they admit that if the HR department is quite strong and they have the authority, and the GM and others have a proper authority to handle and negotiate with the workers, most of the factory related issues could be handled at the factory. But they have a strong reservation regarding trade union practices, and they found anti-trade union discrimination, and their observation here is that the owners are not very much interested to flourish the trade union activities at the factory level, and often they are actually try to influence the trade unions at the factory level. So how to actually make the process much more effective and functional operation of the trade union is very, very important in this context. Then it is we found that senior government officials have their own observations, and they mentioned that they are always ready to provide arbitration support to the owners and to the workers if they are actually approached to them. Otherwise, they are quite ready to. But we think that in some instances, government has a proactive role to play in the process of arbitration and the court-related matters. And as I mentioned to you, that the court activity is not so very smooth and required long time. So that need to be reduced, the time period need to be reduced where government has a strong role to play. From the buyer's point of view, they found that slowly there is an improvement in the employer-worker relationship that they have mentioned while we talked to them. And initially the entrepreneurs are not so much enthusiastic about social dialogue, but gradually they are actually taking part in this social dialogue process, particularly the day-to-day problems initially. Now gradually they are actually providing importance to others. But what is their suggestion here is that trade unions should have to be deal with bigger issues, while the factory-related issues should have to be dealt by the HR of the factory management through the process. And they also think that there is a active role to play in case of maintaining the social compliance at the factory level, under which they also have a global framework agreement with different global unions and associations. So they think that if those trade union related activities and the buyers are work together, they could actually better function at the of the trade union and WPC at the factory level. But what is there? Another observation here is that social dialogue is not actually being actively pursued by all major sourcing countries. There are different views of the sourcing countries regarding social dialogue, so that also sometimes have diverse impact on maintaining the social dialogue at the factory level. So we have a discussion this morning with the factory level management and the factory level workers, and along with the BGME officials, in order to identify what is the factory level observation regarding any kinds of incidences happen there. And particularly we raised the issue of Ashulia in December 2016, and we found a good number of the suggestions there. And what is their observation here is that the suggestions like that PC committees should have to be given more power and authority, power in order to discuss within the factory, and that can be done, and that needs some amendment of law there. And termination of workers should go through the legal process, and that is also another suggestion that has been made. And workers should be, there is a observation here is that workers are not fully aware about their rights and responsibilities. So workers should be aware about their rights at the labor law, and PC committee can work with the trade unions. That is another issue. And another suggestion here is that the election of the PC committees should be much more transparent. So that it can work impartially after the election. So these are the suggestions came while we made the discussion in the morning. My last 5 minutes, I will actually provide some suggestions and some concrete suggestions. First, we think that it needs to ensure better management at the factory level. So that is a very much thing to be done at the factory level in order to avoid labor unrest at the factories. And for that, I think, as I say, is that strengthening the HR management and strengthening the financial management is very, very crucial. And they need to have adequate authority of the senior management of the factory in order to handle any issues and to have power to solve any problem. So that kinds of authority delegation have to be there at the factory level. And workers and employers need to be aware more regarding their regarding these social dialogue related issues, and they need to provide adequate knowledge and training, and that can be done by Department of Labor. I think there need to have a distinction between factory level issues and sectoral issues. I think the factory level issues should have to be done, all kinds of factory related aspects which may relate to labor law conflicts, mistreatment of workers, shutdown of factories, or worker dismissal. But other issues like the wage and other things can be discussed at the sectoral level. I would like to request your views regarding it, that which issues to be discussed at the factory level and which issues to be discussed at the sectoral level, whether you have any other views on it. But what we also think that buyers and retailers need to take a role in ensuring better factory management. And that is related to not only their auditing that they do, big retailers and brands may do, but there are smaller brands, retailers and buyers that they also need to be comply with the common standards of monitoring, common standards of auditing while they work with the Bangladeshi factories. They need to have a factory monitoring authority, need to be strengthened. I think DIFE and DOLE may include some of the criteria, whether these factories have a good cash flow or whether they have a good practice of worker treatment related things. I know they have some criteria, but they need to actually address these things while they monitor the factories on a regular basis. I think the better functioning of the arbitration and labor courts may create a backward pressure to the factories to solve their problems at the factory level. So if the time lag at the factory level, time lag at the court, or at the time lag at the arbitration process could be reduced, it could automatically create pressure to the factory management to solve their problems at a factory level. So in that case, I think more labor courts to be set up in the nearby locality of the major industrial belt, and that could create better facility to take part by the workers to avail those facilities. I think, as I say to you, is that they need to have the facility, trade union facility at the EPZ areas, and government should take necessary steps to amend the EPZ law in order to activate the trade union at the EPZ areas. They need to have awareness building among employers and workers, and that could be done through the proper training by Department of Labor. And I think they need to have a redefined role of different agents working in the discussion and negotiation process. I think different local agents took part during the time of crisis, which may create adverse pressure in the discussion process. I think that should have a very clear and specific role of different local agents, including industrial police, that what role they should play in the discussion and the negotiation process. My final point here is that other than the factory level initiative, they need to have a national level initiatives in order to sensitize the social dialogue. In this context, the recently formed the trade union RMG Tripartite Consultative Council need to be more strengthened and need to have more resources to actually work on a daily basis. Then they need to they need to set up a secretariat and to have a separate financial resources in order to actually provide adequate support to the ministries and other respective departments. We also think that the bipartite discussion is also important along with the tripartite one. Most importantly, government and the labor-related organizations should have a regular sitting at a bipartite level. It is not necessarily of the tripartite one, but the bipartite type of discussion is also important, and that need to be ensured at the level. And also the buyers and brands should also ensure better price. We also found in some cases, workers also mentioned, owners also mentioned that reduced price create a pressure to the owners in order to maintain compliance standards. So buyers and retailers have to ensure better price so that factory could actually maintain their decent work environment and social dialogue at the workplace. My final point is that there is a role of the sourcing countries, and that role is that the sourcing countries should have to put more emphasis on ensuring social dialogue and industrial relations to be maintained by the buyers. And that role, that kinds of things can be ensured by the sourcing countries with regard to the buyers who are actually working for them, for their consumers. So if those kinds of things could be ensured, I think there is gradually an environment to be created within Bangladesh that could actually facilitate and catalyze social dialogue in the RMG sector in the coming days. So with these words, I like to conclude.
Excellencies, guests, colleagues, I'll get into Bangla now. Before I do that, I would request once again to applaud my colleague Dr. Khandokar Ghulam Muazzam and his research team that has done a very extensive, very up-to-date and a very relevant policy-oriented study for this occasion. Please give them a big hand once more. আপনারা দেখেছেন যে শুনবেন আর কি বিস্তারিতভাবে ডক্টর মুয়াজ্জেমের কাছ থেকে যে উপস্থাপনাটা উনি দিলেন সেটা হচ্ছে যে একটি দুর্বল সহায়ক পরিবেশে কিভাবে সামাজিক সংলাপ গড়ে তোলা যায় আমাদের গার্মেন্টস খাতের জন্য। এখানে গার্মেন্টস খাত, সামাজিক সংলাপ এবং পরিবেশ, দুর্বল পরিবেশ, এই তিনটি জিনিস আছে। উনি প্রথমে যেটা আপনাদের করেছেন আপনারা খেয়াল করে দেখবেন, উনি তো ওনার প্রথম অংশে প্রথম ভাগে এই আজকের এই উপস্থাপনাটা দুটো ভাগ আছে। প্রথম যদি আমি ক ভাগটাকে দেখি তাহলে সেখানে যে রানা প্লাজার উত্তর পরিস্থিতি উনি বিশ্লেষণ করেছেন এবং রানা প্লাজার উত্তর পরিস্থিতি বিশ্লেষণ করতে গিয়ে উনি দুটো দিকেই দেখেছেন। একটি হলো শ্রমিকদের অবস্থা কি এবং তারা যে এখনো সাহায্য সহযোগিতা, চিকিৎসা সেবা এবং পুনর্বাসনের অভাব বোধ করছেন সেই জিনিসটি উনি তুলে ধরেছেন। আর অপরদিকে যে প্রতিষ্ঠান ভিত্তিক অর্থাৎ এই আমাদের প্রস্তুত পোশাক শিল্পের প্রতিষ্ঠানগুলোর ভিতরে যে সমস্ত পরিস্থিতি বিরাজ করছে এবং তার উপরে কিভাবে সংশোধনমূলক পদক্ষেপগুলো কিভাবে আগাচ্ছে এবং আগানোর ক্ষেত্রে কি কি অন্তরায় রয়েছে, আর্থিক অন্তরায় সহ, সেইটি উনি বিশ্লেষণ করেছেন। তো প্রথম ভাগটা ছিল রানা প্লাজার উত্তর পরিস্থিতি প্রতিষ্ঠানগতভাবে এবং শ্রমিকদের ক্ষেত্রে, এবং সেখানে বলতে গিয়ে অবশ্য উদ্যোক্তাদের কথাও এসেছে, কারণ বেশ কিছু সংখ্যক উদ্যোক্তা যারা এই মুহূর্তে খাত ছেড়ে চলে যেতে বাধ্য হচ্ছেন বিভিন্ন পরিস্থিতিতে। দ্বিতীয় অংশে ওনার লক্ষ্য করবেন তিনটি অংশ আছে, কিন্তু উনি শুরু করেছেন সবাইকে স্মরণ করিয়ে দিয়ে যে সরকারের সাথে আইএলও, ইউরোপিয়ান ইউনিয়ন, মার্কিন যুক্তরাষ্ট্র, কানাডার সাথে যে চুক্তি হয়েছিল কম্প্যাক্ট, সাস্টেনেবিলিটি কম্প্যাক্টের, সেইখানে খুব পরিষ্কারভাবে যে তিনটি জিনিসকে উল্লেখ করা আছে সেটা উনি স্মরণ করিয়ে দিয়েছেন। সেখানে আছে যে ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন করার অধিকার, আপনার তাদের সংঘবদ্ধ হওয়ার যে অধিকার সেইটি, শিক্ষা এবং প্রশিক্ষণের বিষয়টি, এবং যে তার কর্মপরিবেশের ক্ষেত্রে তার যে তার যে নিরাপত্তা সেই বিষয়টি, এবং শেষে যে প্রতিনিধির মাধ্যমে সব ক্ষেত্রে কিভাবে সেটা সেটা শ্রমিক এবং উদ্যোক্তা উভয় ক্ষেত্রেই প্রতিনিধির মাধ্যমে কিভাবে আলোচনার ভিত্তিতে যাবে। এরপরে যিনি উনি যেটা তিনটে জিনিস করেছেন আপনারা খেয়াল করবেন, একটি হলো যে রানা প্লাজার উত্তর পরিস্থিতিতে কিভাবে ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন সংঘ গড়ে ওঠার যে প্রবণতা সেই ট্রেন্ডটা উনি দেখিয়েছেন। আপনারা লক্ষ্য করবেন যে 1915 সালের পরের থেকে এই ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন সংখ্যা বাড়ার প্রবণতা শ্লথ হয়ে গেছে, কমে গেছে। যেভাবে 12, 13, 14, 15-তে ছিল তারপর একটু কমে গেছে। তারপরে উনি দেখিয়েছেন কিভাবে এই সমস্ত ক্ষেত্রে শিল্প সংঘাতের পরিস্থিতি কি ছিল, এবং ওইটার ভিতরে খুব সুন্দর সুন্দর মানে খুবই প্রণিধানযোগ্য মানে পর্যবেক্ষণ আছে। যেমন গাজীপুর এবং চিটাগংয়ের সাথে সাথে আশুলিয়া এবং ঢাকার পরিস্থিতির তুলনা, বড়দের সাথে ছোটদের তুলনা, এবং মজুরির বহির্ভূত ক্ষেত্রে যে পরিস্থিতি, এবং এরপরে যে সামাজিক সংঘাত নিরসন করার জন্য যে সমস্ত পদক্ষেপ নেওয়া হয় সেটার উপরে। এটা হলো ওনার প্রথম অংশ, দ্বিতীয় ভাগের প্রথম অংশ। দ্বিতীয় ভাগের দ্বিতীয় অংশতে ওনার আছে, উনি মনোভাবের একটি পর্যালোচনা করেছেন। সেখানে শ্রমিকদের মনোভাব, উদ্যোক্তাদের মনোভাব এবং সরকারের মনোভাব এবং যারা কিনছে বিদেশিরা তাদের মনোভাবের দিকে দেখেছেন, এবং উনি খুব বিষয়গুলো আপনাদের সামনে আছে, আমি এটা পুনরাবৃত্তি করছি না। কিন্তু যেটা লক্ষণীয় যে সেখানে বরাবরই কিন্তু এই যে পার্টিসিপেশন কমিটি এবং ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন এই দুটোর ভিতরে পরিপূরকতা এবং পার্থক্য এই জিনিসটা বারবারই কিন্তু বিভিন্ন সময় উঠেছে। এবং শেষে যেটা আজকে উনি সবচেয়ে, যেটা হয়তো পাওয়ার পয়েন্টের ভিতরে আপনাদের কাছে যেটা গেছে সেটার ভিতরে নেই, আজ সকালে উনি একটি সামাজিক সংলাপ করেছেন এই বিল্ডিংয়ে। সো সেই বিল্ডিংয়ে যে সামাজিক সংলাপ হয়েছে সেইটার বিষয় উনি এখানে ফলাফল এখানে দিয়েছেন এবং সেখানে কর্মসূচি। The point I was making is that there is basically the two parts. One is the post Rana Plaza evaluation, and then there is the study itself, that what had been the trends in the author has reminded us about the sustainability compact between the government and the development partners, and then there is of course the trend in trade union registration issues, the incidence of industrial actions, and then how the arbitration process and the conflict resolution takes place. And then comes in the second part of the second part, the perception analysis of the four major stakeholders: the government, the trade union, the workers, the buyers, and the entrepreneurs. And finally, what the author has done, Muazzam and his team, that they held a social dialogue today in this very premise before this meeting, and they have put forward some of the discussions, the issues which has been discussed there, and so you got the essence of that, a very, very fresh, less than I think 2 hours back, the discussion between the entrepreneurs, workers, and the analysts, researchers. And I don't know, Muazzam, was there a government person there present in your dialogue? Okay, that's okay. They can make it up now. Hopefully. So as you can see, this is a wide range of issues which are there. You can discuss Rana Plaza, and thereafter you can also discuss the recent trends in the industrial actions and the representation, and the role, as I mentioned, that the issue of participation committee versus the trade union, their similarities and complementarity has come up a number of occasions. The judicial, the legal process on the EPZ trade union rights have come up as well. So you can pick anywhere you want to, in any language you want to, as I said, limited to 2. So আমি ওটা open করব on this. Please raise your hand or give me a sheet of paper. I am myopic, so please help me with your names and others to sending it over here, and we will try to and I will come into those. So please, I request my colleagues to collect the names so that we can have an idea, so that we have also a representative set of intervention, that not only one side but on the 4 sides gets represented over there. I will come to you, Excellencies, and everybody else. But before that, if you allow me, I want to bring in the discussion we have with us today. As you know that we will এক জায়গায় করেন, একজনের কাছে দেন। So let me invite Mr. Chaudhry Ashikul Alam, who is the Secretary General of Trade Union Shangho, to come up with his comments, and You have 7 to 8 minutes, and then we will open the discussions. But before I do that, my chairman has expressed the need to speak before the open discussion starts, to make his observations on the presentation, and then I will come to the floor. Please, apni bolen.
Thanks, moderator. Honorable Chair, Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Michael Schipper, Secretary, Ministry of Labour and Employment, representative of the Embassy, Director of ILO, Honorable Special Guest, discussions, participants, electronics and print media representatives, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. I have delivered the speech in Bangla. মূলত আজকে যিনি প্রবন্ধের উপস্থাপক, উনি অত্যন্ত সুন্দরভাবেই বিষয়গুলোর উপস্থাপন করেছেন ও বিষয়ে ব্যাখ্যা, কোশ্চেন রেজ করার প্রশ্নটা খুব একটা নাই, কারণ উনি চেষ্টা করেছেন সমগ্র দিকটাকেই তার আলোচনার ভিতরে নিয়ে আসার জন্য। খুঁটিনাটি দিক হয়তো আমরা পরবর্তীতেও ইনকর্পোরেট করতে পারবো, কিন্তু মেন ফোকাসটা এখানে এসে গেছে। ওনার আলোচনার থেকেই যদি আমরা লক্ষ্য করি, তাহলে আসলে যদি লেবার পার্সপেক্টিভসে দেখি, তা আসলে আমরা যদি শ্রমের মর্যাদা দিতে না জানি, ভ্যালুজ অফ দ্য লেবার, শ্রম ছাড়াই তো কিছু হয় না। মাইন্ড সেটিংয়ে যদি শ্রমের প্রতি মর্যাদা আসে, তাহলে অনেক কিছুই রিজলভ করা সম্ভব। ক্যাপিটাল, ইন্ডাস্ট্রি, অল দ্য অ্যাপারেটাস কোনো ফাংশন করবে না যদি সেখানে লেবার ফোর্স, লেবারটা যদি তার সাথে যুক্ত না হয়। এই মেইন কজটা যদি আমরা বিবেচনা করি, আমি সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগের ক্ষেত্রে বলেন, ইন্ডাস্ট্রিয়াল রিলেশনের ক্ষেত্রে বলেন, কালেকটিভ বার্গেনিং এর ক্ষেত্রে বলেন, সব ক্ষেত্রে কিন্তু মূল বেসিসটা হচ্ছে আমি ইচ অ্যান্ড এভরি ফ্যাক্টরি, মূল নেচারটা হচ্ছে লেবার ফোর্সটা, লেবারটাকে যদি আমরা ভ্যালুজ দিতে পারি, তাহলে আসলে অনেক কিছুই রিজলভ করা সম্ভব। মূলত এই লেবারের ভ্যালুজটা একসময় কিন্তু অনেকটা অগ্রসর ছিল আমাদের দেশে। এটা কমার কারণ সামাজিক অবক্ষয়, গণতান্ত্রিক মূল্যবোধের অভাব। এটা তো খালি কোনো একটা ডিপার্টমেন্ট, কোনো একটা মিনিস্ট্রি, কোনো একটা ফোকাস গ্রুপ এটাকে আসলে ওভারকাম করতে পারবে না। এটাকে ওভারকাম করার জন্য দরকার হচ্ছে সোশ্যাল রিলেশন, যেটা সোশ্যাল রিলেশনটা ডেভেলপ করা, যেটা আইএলও প্রতিষ্ঠা সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগের মধ্যে দিয়ে এটা অগ্রসর হওয়া সম্ভব। এখানে আসলে মূল প্রশ্ন হচ্ছে, ইন্ডাস্ট্রি যখন গড়ে ওঠে তখন তার চিন্তার জগৎটা কোথায়? আমরা যদি আরএমজি সেক্টরকে ফোকাস করি, তাহলে আসলে এখানে আরএমজি সেক্টরের প্রারম্ভিক যাত্রা হচ্ছে ব্যবসায়িক মনোভাব থেকে। ব্যবসায়িক মনোভাব আর শিল্পীয় মনোভাব এক মনোভাব না। ব্যবসায়িক মনোভাব হচ্ছে আমি পুঁজি ইনভেস্ট করতেছি, তার থেকে আমার মুনাফা আসবে। শিল্পীয় মনোভাবও কিন্তু পুঁজি ইনভেস্ট করতেছে, তার থেকে মুনাফা আসবে। কিন্তু দুইটার ফর্মের ভিতরে ডিফারেন্সটা হচ্ছে, একজন শিল্প উদ্যোক্তা, আমরা অতীতে যদি শিল্প কারখানা তৈরির ক্ষেত্রে যদি আমাদের দেশেই রেকর্ড দেখি, তাহলে অনেক ইন্ডাস্ট্রি আছে যেখানে অনেক ফ্যাসিলিটিস প্রোভাইড করা হয়, হেলথ সাপোর্ট, অর্থাৎ মেডিকেল কেয়ার, স্কুল, হাউজিং, ডরমিটরি, বিভিন্ন ধরনের ফ্যাসিলিটিস সেখানে প্রোভাইড করা হয় ইন্ডাস্ট্রির ক্ষেত্রে। কিন্তু গার্মেন্টস সেক্টরে সেটা হয়নি। এখানে আনপ্লয়েড হইতেই ইন্ডাস্ট্রির যাত্রা শুরু হয়েছে, এবং আসলে ডে বাই ডে বিভিন্ন ইনসিডেন্ট, বিশেষত রানা প্লাজার মতো বড় ধরনের একটা দুর্ঘটনা, যেটাকে অনেকেই বলে পরিকল্পিত খুন, এই ঘটনার প্রেক্ষাপটে আসলে ন্যাশনাল ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ইম্প্যাক্ট আমাদেরকে অনেক কিছু অগ্রসর হতে সহায়তা করছে। তো এখানে মূল প্রয়োজন হচ্ছে আসলে আমরা যদি মানুষের প্রতি মর্যাদা দিতে জানি, তাহলে রিলেশনটা ডেভেলপ করা সম্ভব। কারণ একজন উদ্যোক্তার সাথে আর একজন কর্মী একজন পুঁজির মালিকের সাথে একজন শ্রমিকের সম্পর্কটা যদি মর্যাদাপূর্ণ জায়গায় প্রতিষ্ঠিত না হয়, তাহলে আসলেই যত ক্রাইসিস আমরা আলোচনা করি না কেন, এটা রিজলভ করাটা খুব সহজ ব্যাপার না। তো আমি আমার বক্তব্য খুব দীর্ঘায়িত করবো না, যেহেতু এখানে অনেক ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন লিডাররা আছেন, তারা অনেক কমেন্টস পাস করবেন। আমার যেটা এখানে যে রিকমেন্ডেশনগুলো আসছে, সেই রিকমেন্ডেশনের ক্ষেত্রে আসলে আমরা ইন দ্য লেবার পার্সপেক্টিভস, আমি বিইং এ লেবার লিডার, ফ্রিডম অফ অ্যাসোসিয়েশন যদি থাকে আর কালেকটিভ বার্গেনিং করার প্রসেসটাকে যদি ইনশিওর করা যায়, তাহলে আসলে অনেক বিষয় রিজলভ করা ইজিলি সম্ভব। তো এইটা করতে গেলে আসলে এই রোলটা প্লে করতে হবে কাকে? যিনি সমাজকে লিড করেন, রাষ্ট্রকে যিনি চালান। ইনভেস্টর খালি বাংলাদেশের তো না, এখানে ইনভেস্টমেন্টটা আসছে বায়ার ব্র্যান্ডস থেকে, ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ইনভেস্টমেন্ট এখানে আছে, তারা একটা প্রফিট করেন। এবার ন্যাশনাল ইনভেস্টর যিনি এখানে শিল্পটা করছেন, তার প্রফিটের মার্জিনটাকে তিনি হিসাব করেন। আর আমি যে ওয়ার্কার কাজ করি, আমার প্রশ্ন হচ্ছে আমার জীবিকার প্রশ্ন। আমার জীবিকার প্রশ্নে আমি আসলে সবসময় তো চাইবই আমি ভালোভাবে বেঁচে থাকার জন্য, শ্রমটা আমি দিচ্ছি আমার ভালো জীবনটাকে স্বাচ্ছন্দ্যে নিয়ে যাওয়ার জন্য। সেই ক্ষেত্রে রাষ্ট্র বলেন, সরকার বলেন, রাষ্ট্রের বিভিন্ন মেকানিজম বলেন, ইন্টারন্যাশনাল ন্যাশনাল বিভিন্ন অর্গানাইজেশন বলেন, সবাইকে কিন্তু ইনশিওর করতে হবে যে আমার কাজের মূল্যায়ন দিতে হবে, আমার জীবন মানের উন্নয়ন ঘটাতে হবে। যেভাবে সেটা ঘটানো যায় সেই কাজটা আমাকে করতে হবে। সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ।
অনেক ধন্যবাদ জনাব চৌধুরী আশিকুল আলম। Mr. Alam has essentially made the point that the critical challenge is to create a mutually respectful relationship between the entrepreneur and the workers. And the entrepreneur's attitude currently does not adequately value the role of the workers. And here he reminds us that it is not only the entrepreneurs themselves or the national, but also there is a role for the international investors to look at the livelihood conditions of the workers, and the government has a role to play over here. But he places the whole social dialogue concept of this workers entrepreneur relationship in the broader context of deteriorating social values within the country. So he has a bigger frame of things, and within that the relative role of that. Thank you very much for the intervention. I am sure there are other trade union leaders who will come in duly, and I have a long list of more than 24 names already, and we will be sure that everybody will get a chance. And you know that even for a half a minute I will get back to you on that. So from the very beginning I'll be very tight in terms of the timing, and so please do not repeat. My request is please do not appreciate the presentation. We know it is very good, so it is taken for granted. And also please do not address the podium. No, you don't need to address anybody by name and etc. It is also taken for granted that you are addressing them. So and please do not repeat. Make the point as succinct and as sharp as possible. And those who will be more provocative, they will get more time. Please, let me start by I see Asif Ibrahim. Huh? Oh, so apni bolben sir. Ekhoni. I'm sorry, over there. I just kept my chair first. So Professor Rehman Soban will make his comments first.
Thank you. Before all of you get down to put your own individual thoughts there, I want to provoke you to think a bit more deeply about the issues which are going to be discussed and which arose out of this. And the central question that you should all be asking yourselves when you are making your comments is how far have we been, and in terms of the way we are looking at the interventions that have been put on the table, how far have we addressed the fundamental sources of the problems which lay at the bottom of Rana Plaza. And I would just want to draw your attention to 4 sets of issues which I think need to be part of your thought processes. Number 1, of course, was that the real tragedy of Rana Plaza originated in 2 factors. One was the individualization of the workers. if you will cast your mind back to the moment before the building collapsed, the workers saw the damaged premises. They came out and they were reluctant to go in. And then the foreman could in fact actually force them to go in because he threatened that you are all under individual short-term contracts, and if you do not go in, you will be discharged. Now this could simply never have happened if the workers had been collectively bound together in an institutional relationship and could have collectively then resisted the pressure of the foreman that they had to go in. So that was the central problem, and all the subsequent discussions and in terms of the interventions which have gone on, including the whole issue of the rights of the workers and the social dialogue and all the rest of it, and the issue of trade unionization, has to really address the issue of the workers' capacity for collective action and the institutional dimensions of this. Now, all the solutions which are being put on the table really extend to the very concept of the right to form individual unions in individual enterprises. Now this, of course, from its origin, creates, in a way, reproduces, though perhaps a bit more strongly, the unequal relationship which really informs relationships between workers and employers, not just in this industry, but in any industry of unequal social power. And basically what you will want to look at is the possibility of addressing this through collective action on the part of workers so that their bargaining powers are in fact more equitable in the relationship. Now, in this day and age, this is not fashionable. Many of you will have read the Piketty book, where the unequal distribution of gains between labor and capital relate to the unequal relations between these two forces. And this issue in the Bangladesh context, where it is more extreme, must be addressed by all of you. How do we deal with this problem? My own approach has been for many years, as some of you are familiar, with the fact that you have to make workers into fundamental stakeholders in the enterprises where they work, and part of this will come by making them into stakeholders where it counts as business partners in the enterprises where they work, rather than becoming dependent perpetually on an inherently unequal relationship. So the notion that even if you get what you want, simply the right to form unions in one form or the other, this will address your problem, I'm not entirely sure is going to guarantee that there will be a more balanced relationship, because the next stage would be collective action so that you will have one bargaining body, and then the ultimate issue will be the structural relationship of the workers as being the partners of their employers and not just dependent on the market forces that keep them where they are. The next issue is regarding the government. Now, the second problem which was central to the Rana Plaza tragedy was the whole weakness in the governance system, that you could have complete lack of oversight on the one hand because of the weak administration and accountability mechanisms of the administration. You could have politically influential property owner who could in fact both suborn and use political influence to in fact actually see that enforcement mechanisms were not put in place. And this could then really not find address at the national and political level. So the logical question now which we all have to ask ourselves, hopefully the Labour Secretary, who has now had long exposure to this, will be able to say something, is that all right, we have now put in more overseers in this system at the factory level, I do not know what exactly they have actually done in terms of the mechanisms for granting permission, how far the wages of both the overseers that they appoint and the people who are in the chain of giving permissions to buildings and so on and so forth to see that this can go ahead are in fact sufficient to compensate for the inevitable possibility that they will be offered social compensations far in excess of whatever remunerations they are actually getting. And in order to address this, how then is the chain of accountability working in the government itself? That are we exercising constant and regular oversight over the individual elements in the system assigned for oversight to see that they are doing their work, that even though they may have been better trained, are they actually doing what they are supposed to be doing, and is anyone actually being taken into account if they're not actually doing their work? The most serious problem you need to consider over here is that this is the 4th year of the Rana Plaza tragedy and shame on our country. I have not noticed on the anniversary of Rana Plaza over the last 4 years any discussion in the highest body of the land, our parliament, on seeing what progress has been made and what levels of accountability have actually been exercised by the government. I have not seen any parliamentary committee actually sitting and made responsible for overseeing all the critical elements which are in fact actually being put in place to see whether they are being enforced. Now, unless the top political power in the land and the relative institutional apex body is not going to concern itself what is an issue of national and global and domestic social importance, you do have a problem. And what can be actually done to engage our highest bodies to in fact constantly address this issue and exercise the political oversight which is critical to this process? That is a question. I don't know if any parliamentarians are here with us, but this would be a question that we would really want them to address. The relevant question which derives from this would be, for both the administration and the legislatures, is that suppose that this huge body of international pressure manifested in accord and alliance, and then ILO affording us the privilege of a special paragraph in their report for whatever significance this may have, suppose that none of this had been going on over here. Would we not have spontaneously felt a responsibility to do something within this country to address all these basic problems and to ensure that this was not reproduced? Is this all entirely being done as a form of international pressure on us, and all our responses are to demonstrate that yes, we will comply and you should in fact actually give us more time? I mean, could we be entrusted by the international community not to put leverage on us, but to depend on us to actually do all the things that we should normally be doing as an effective government? That is the way. Now, the final issue I want to put on the table is I find that the international community is somehow or the other getting away scot-free. They have put in a few $100 million. They put alliances in place. What agitates them is that then the structures should be habitable and the working conditions a bit better. But none of them have actually applied their minds, and here I particularly address governments and international institutions such as the ILO. You've developed all these buzzwords, I find, starting from decent work to social dialogue, and these are sort of nice words, but at the end of the day, there are more basic problems which are not incorporated in your buzzwords. And the central element is that you are operating in a deeply unjust global value chain, where the $5 shirt, which I buy from this gentleman over here, is going to be marketed in Walmart at $25, or in Sweden at an even higher price. Now, where exactly does this $20 go? Is this the natural working of the market mechanism, or is this a manifestation of an unjust global order in which a lot of this incorporates rents derived from the unequal relationship which prevails in the international system? This means that you guys can come along and give lectures to us on our moral and social responsibilities and walk away scot-free to buy your $25 shirt, and to in fact then let this guy get along and carry out as much of a squeeze as possible on the value chain within which he actually works. Now, what you have actually left us with is a business model in which people like him are actually compelled to squeeze people like them as much as they can, because they have to do all this within those $5. Now, unless there is major investigation of a professional nature, of a political nature, and at the end of the day of an international nature, where Oxfam and ActionAid and everyone else join together to deconstruct the value chain and to see how it can be made more inequitable, I personally do not believe that all these normative conversations which go on, and all the conversations at the end of the day are really normative, are addressing any of the fundamental structural problems which have actually been at the source of Rana Plaza, and which will in various ways reproduce this, because everyone eventually gets tired of playing the Boy Scout internationally, and then they go away and the market mechanism takes over. So I hope all of you will actually, when you are discussing this, move away from these symptomatic conversations which have been going on year after year, and address some of the basic questions, because I can guarantee you 5 years from now, when much of the pressure will be relaxed, many of these problems will reoccur, and where they are not being addressed, whilst they may be partially addressed in the government sector, there are many other industries where no one is actually looking at it, and this is happening every day. Thank you. So
Thank you.
I leave that to you.
Thank you very much. I think I wouldn't even dare to translate that in English, or I would not dare to, because also in Bengali. প্রফেসর সুমন যা করলেন মূলত হলো রানা প্লাজার এই ঘটনার মূল উৎসের উনি 3-4টি বিষয়কে আমাদের স্মরণ করিয়ে দিয়েছেন। প্রথমটিতে হলো যে শ্রমিক মালিকের যে অসম সম্পর্ক, এই অসম সম্পর্কের ভিত্তিতে কেমন করে এই ঘটনা ঘটলো, তাদের যদি সেই দিন যদি যৌথভাবে পদক্ষেপ নেওয়ার সক্ষমতা থাকতো, তাহলে হয়তো এই দুর্ঘটনা থেকে তারা বেঁচে যেতে পারতো। উনি আরও উল্লেখ করেছেন যে এই পুরোটার আমাদের সমাজের ভিতরে যে ধারাবাহিকভাবে জবাবদিহিতার অভাব, এবং এইটার উপরে যে নজরদারি দরকার ছিল রাষ্ট্রের পক্ষ থেকে, সেইখানে বড় ধরনের ঘাটতি ছিল, এবং এই ঘাটতিটা আরও বেশি প্রকাশিত হয়েছে তৃতীয় যে বিষয়ে, সেটা হলো রাজনৈতিক ক্ষেত্রে আমাদের যারা জনপ্রতিনিধিরা আছেন, আমরা এখানে এরকম আলোচনা করছি, কিন্তু সর্বোচ্চ পর্যায়ে বা মন্ত্রী পরিষদ বা পার্লামেন্টের পক্ষ থেকে, সংসদের পক্ষ থেকে ধারাবাহিকভাবে কোনো নজরদারি কোনো সময় আমরা এটাতে লক্ষ্য করিনি। এবং সর্বশেষ উনি যেটা বলেছেন সেটা হলো যে বিজনেস মডেল দাঁড়িয়েছে, যেটাতে একটি $25 শার্টকে তৈরি করা হয়, $5 বিক্রি করা হয় $25, বাকি $20 উপরে হাত না দিয়ে এমন একটা বিজনেস মডেলে শুধু 5 টাকার উপরে অত্যাচার করে আমরা আসলে কতদূর আগাতে পারবো শুধুমাত্র এই নীতি কথা বাক্য দিয়ে, এইটার ব্যাপারে উনি সংশয় প্রকাশ করেছেন। এবং একদিন এই আলোচনাগুলি শেষ হয়ে যাবে, আবার ওই বাজার ব্যবস্থার ওই মডেলেই আমাদের আবার সকলকে ফিরে যেতে হবে, এইরকম ভবিতব্যকে আমাদের এড়ানো দরকার, এইটার ব্যাপারে উনি আমাদের মানে মনোযোগ দিয়েছেন, আকর্ষণ করেছেন। আপনাদের সকলকে ধন্যবাদ শোনার জন্য। এখন আমি ফিরে আসছি মূল আলোচনার ভিতরে। আমি প্রথমে তখন আসিফকে দিয়েছিলাম ফ্লোর, দেন আই উইল কাম ব্যাক এক্সেলেন্সি টু দি Canadian High Commissioner, and then then we'll proceed with all of you. I have a name of 21 over here. Please, list of 21.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's very difficult to say anything after the brilliant comment that the chairman has made. Indeed, very heartfelt and very touching, and we must all look at those points very seriously. I would go straight into the presentation, and I would like to refer to slide number 40, where it said about the stakeholders' perception about social dialogue, that the entrepreneurs are not against worker organizations such as trade unions per se, but their main proposition is that these worker organizations should be formed by the workers of the factories, and there should not be any external influence. That is the first point. And the second one is on slide number 46, where it said, again under stakeholders' perception about social dialogue, that the participatory committees formed in all the factories are slowly gaining momentum in their activities, but there is need for more trade unions which can function better in these factories. Based on these 2 points, I would like to quote some statistics about the trade unions. In 2013, there were 14.5 million TU members in the United States, which is down from 17.7 million in 1983. The percentage of workers belonging to a union in the USA or total labor union density was 10.8% compared to 20.1% in 1983. Union membership in the private sector has fallen under 7%, levels not seen since 1932. From a global perspective, the density in 2013 was 7.7% in France, 18.1% in Germany, 27.1% in Canada, and 85.5% in Iceland, which is the largest in the world. My point is, if Workers' Participatory Committee is working well in the factories and ensuring that the interests of the workers are protected, then should we not encourage that rather than focusing on TU? If we do look at TUs, I don't have anything against trade unions, and I think it's a good mechanism. However,
Asif, what is your point?
my point is that if there is a trade union,
Yeah.
can we not?
Are you telling that the workers don't love trade union anymore? Is that the point?
No, if we want to protect the interest of the workers, we have to find the right mechanism which delivers.
And trade union is not good enough for that. That's
An alternate workers' participatory committee can work. And I'm saying if there is a negotiation area, there has to be a central federation of the garment workers of Bangladesh, one body, where the owners will negotiate with one body. Can we get to that? If we can get to that, maybe we can get some solution. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's a very operational, valid point. The trade union leaders will respond to that. Excellency.
Thank you. Let me just start by congratulating you and the CPD and ILO for organizing this event today. We should never forget the loss of these more than 1,000 people who lost their life on that day. So having this event today is very, very significant. So congratulations and thank you. It was, however, this tragedy was a catalyst for change, and we should never also forget that at that point there was big change. It was one of the most dangerous industry in the world to have become one of the safest. And it has been done through a very exemplary process, a process that can be followed by many other countries now in the world. And don't forget that just after the Rana Plaza, there was a lot of pressure in our country to stop buying from Bangladesh. And instead of doing this, it was the unions in our country that pressed for continuing buying for Bangladesh, but instead of that, pushing for reforms. You mentioned in the introductory remark that it is an unfinished agenda. I don't think it will ever be a finished agenda. It needs to be a sustainable agenda for change that needs to be put in place. We should also always remember that the issue, as Dr. Soban mentioned, the issue of the security and social dialogue are intimately interlinked. And for the reason you mentioned of what happened just in the few hours before this tragic incident. This is also, and it was not mentioned in the introductory remark, but this is also a question of good business. When there was the Ashulia event in December, there was a lot of pressure from consumers in Canada that were worried, that were pressing. Consumers don't want to buy product for which the labor, the rights of the worker are not respected. So by doing so, it's also a very good business because you ensure you ensure that you will have clients. Now I would like to, you ask us what could be done. I would say that I would address it at 3 levels. One is it relates to the comment you made about the international community. I would just like to remind you that Canada is pressing for and promoting a what we call a progressive trade agenda. This is the value, this is what we are pressing. What does it mean? A progressive trade agenda means that during the trade agreement that are negotiated, we must take into consideration environmental issues as well as labor right issues. This is part of it. The reason for that is to ensure address the question of inequalities and question related to sustainable development. The second, and so to do so, it means that all the country should promote and continue supporting the highest level of labor rights standards. And those standards are reflected in what the ILO is doing in its work. So if all the country push for that, this will stay the level playing field, and the country will not compare themselves with the lowest one achievers, but the best achievers. The second point I would say is that it relates to the, you mentioned policy, regulation, governance. These are important issues, but one thing that must be recognized is that also the government should get the tools, they should get the capacity to deliver on it, to make sure that these policy, these regulations are implemented and they have the sufficient capacity in means of in personnel. We know that the dive doesn't have enough inspectors, and also these regulations should be applied equally, uniformly in the country, whether it includes EPZ and SEZ. The third point relates to the capacity building, making sure that the workers, all the stakeholders, have the capacity to talk at the same level. I'm quite impressed by the work that ILO is doing, and I was quite impressed to go last Thursday to the launch of the, I think they call it Academy of Workers. This is a project done by the Friedrich Ebert Foundation. This is a way to approach it, to make sure that everyone talks at the same level. Because the key issue, I think, and what we have seen, is a question of management culture. And management culture doesn't change overnight. It needs to work at all these levels in a constant, sustainable, trust, and open manner. Thank you.
Excellency, you have not actually addressed my question to you, that what exactly would the Canadian government do to investigate a value chain where $20 ends up in the value chain? And are you willing to internationally lead an investigation of this to see whether then there are better global and more fair solutions to address this?
I won't commit for my government here at the table, but I think this is certainly a question, this question of fair pricing is certainly a question of, you allude to that and when you talk about the market force, the market values. But I think that what we are doing in this question of implementing a progressive trade agenda is by addressing these issues. That will be then taken part into this building of this fair trade price. If it's included into this, then it will force also the buyers and everyone to respect that.
Thank you.
No answer.
Well, we will have to now give a chance to the progressive trade agenda thought of that. Let's proceed with the discussion as we move. I had 3 comments from Mr. Khurshid Alam, the Assistant Country Director of UNDP, who has left already. Yeah, so please, you have 1 minute to make those 3 points.
I think, as Asif said, after that intellectually, high deliberation from Professor Revan Sovan, is very, I at least need few hours to digest that.
Yeah.
The 3 points
Please
that
I
wanted to make. One is Rana Plaza tragedy is not over for many people. I think that is very clear from the CPD study. Then what we should do? I think what we're doing, that was study is suggesting, is not enough. I have a suggestion to the Secretary SIPA, whether government can develop a special social protection or social protection strategy for them, because they would need long-term support until we have a sustainable solution, like the insurance policy or other support is made available. Government has 142 social protection schemes. One of them can be absorbed. My second
next point.
Okay, next point is fourth industrial revolution. I think which is a development from disaster. What we can learn from Rana Plaza, how the industry as large can prepare to tackle and address the rise of robotics and other artificial intelligence and build capacity to address that. I think that is the far larger and bigger challenge. We also need to consider, examine and prepare ourselves for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to call upon Kamrul Anam Sahib achen na? হ্যাঁ প্লিজ আপনি আইবিসির পক্ষ থেকে 1 মিনিট হ্যাঁ বলুন না না একটু সকলকে সুযোগ দিতে হবে সকলকে সুযোগ ওইটাই ডেমোক্রেসি সকলের পার্টিসিপেশন লাগবে প্লিজ আসেন যদি স্পেসিফিক পয়েন্ট থাকলে আপনি বলুন
জি বলতেছি
হ্যাঁ
ওকে ধন্যবাদ আমি প্রথমে বলতে চাচ্ছি সেটা হলো এই যে রানা প্লাজা ট্র্যাজেডি যে ক্ষতিপূরণ প্যাকেজ ছিল এই ইনিশিয়েটিভটা ছিল ইউনিয়ন ইনিশিয়েটিভ উইথ দ্য আইএলও সেই কথাটা আমরা জানতে পারি নাই এটা আমি একটু বলে দিলাম দ্বিতীয় কথা হলো যে আমাদের যে রানা প্লাজা ট্র্যাজেডির যারা ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত তারা যে ক্ষতিপূরণ পেয়েছিল সেটা ব্র্যান্ডস এবং বায়ার্সের কন্ট্রিবিউশন পেয়েছিল আর মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রীর পক্ষ থেকে কিছু পেয়েছিল কিন্তু আইনানুগ যে ক্ষতিপূরণ সেটা আসলে পায়নি তারপরে এখন যে আমাদের রানা প্লাজার বর্তমানে যারা আছে যে অবস্থায় আছে আমরা আপনারা জানেন স্পেকট্রাম দুর্ঘটনার পর আমরা কিন্তু একটা ফলো আপ হেলথ চেক আপ করিয়েছিলাম কাউন্সিলিং করিয়েছিলাম কিন্তু এই রানা প্লাজা ট্র্যাজেডির যারা আহত আছে এখন পর্যন্ত তাদের ব্যাপারে এই হেলথ চেক আপটা এই 4 বছরের ভিতরে পরবর্তীতে আর ফলো আপ হয়নি এবং কাউন্সিলিংও হয় নাই আর এরপরে যে বিষয়টা পিসি কমিটি কিন্তু ট্রেড ইউনিয়নের অল্টারনেটিভ নয় আই রিপিট ইট পিসি কমিটি ইজ নট দ্য অল্টারনেটিভ অফ দ্য ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন এই কথাটা আমাদেরকে বুঝতে হবে যারা পিসি কমিটির পক্ষে বলেন তারা পিসি কমিটিটা পাওয়ার ক্ষেত্রে আমার মনে হয় ধারণা নিতে হবে পিসি কমিটিতে ওয়ার্কার্স রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভ আসতে হবে সেই ওয়ার্কার্স রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভটা আসতে হলেই সেখানে ইউনিয়ন অথবা শ্রমিকদের প্রতিনিধি যেতে হবে তো শ্রমিকদের প্রতিনিধি যাওয়ার একমাত্র রূপ একমাত্র পথই হলো সেটা হলো ইউনিয়ন উইদাউট ইউনিয়ন হু উইল দেন নমিনেট দ্য trade union representatives or the workers representatives
Okay,
এটা আমাদেরকে we should mind it এরপরে একটু এখানে আমাদের
আমি তোমাকে একটা প্রশ্ন করছি
শিওর
তুমি তোমার দলকে ও তোমার সরকারকে প্রশ্ন করেছি কি এইসব তুমি যে প্রস্তাব করছো এটা পার্লামেন্টে আলোচনা হচ্ছে না কেন
এটা পার্লামেন্টে আলোচনা হয়েছে কিছু কিছু
সব যে ইস্যুস যে তুমি
নাই তো
তুলছো ওইখানে তোলা গেছে নাকি
কোনটা
এই যে ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন ইজ দ্য রিয়েল রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভ অফ দি ওয়ার্কার্স Did the parliamentarian really discuss and support you? আপনাকে কি এই সাপোর্ট কি আমার পার্লামেন্ট দিয়েছে?
না, পার্লামেন্টে আপনি তো জানেন যে পার্লামেন্টে কত শতাংশ লোক হলো মালিক, এটা আমাদেরকে বুঝতে হবে। পার্লামেন্ট তো শ্রমিকদের পক্ষে নেই, কিন্তু কেউ কেউ তো কথা বলে। আমি পার্লামেন্ট কিন্তু শ্রমিকদের, এখানে যারা আছে তাদের 70% 80% হলো মালিকদের প্রতিনিধি।
ওকে,
বাট তোমার দল যে বঙ্গবন্ধুর দল, ওইটা তো জনসাধারণের দল ছিল না?
জি।
তো তারপর তুমি কি করছো?
আমি তো ফাইট করতেছি। আমি সরকার, আমি পার্টিতে আছি বলে তো পার্টি লেজুর করব না।
Okay, Mr. Hassan is making the point the parliament is not discussing because most of the parliamentarians are entrepreneurs and it is not there in the class interest to do that. That's the point he's making, and my chair is making the point. If he belongs to the Awami League is a party of the people, they should do that. Na, thank you. আমাকে আর পারবো না, আমি আর সময় পারবো না।
শেষ কথাটা বলে দিই। ইউএস এর কথা বলা হয়েছে, ইউএসএ তে যে ফ্যাসিলিটিস, যে ওয়েজেস, যে সোশ্যাল সেফটি নেট আছে এবং সে বাংলাদেশে সে তুলনায় কি আছে সেটা আমাদেরকে বুঝতে হবে। আর অন্যদিকে ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন করার অধিকার আমাদের সংবিধানে আছে, আমাদের লতে আছে, আইএলও কনভেনশনে আছে।
Please, Commissioner, that's enough. Thank you. Let me invite now over here, please.
Thank you.
Let me invite now the representative of the European Union. We do have the deputy head of the EU over here, Mr. Jürgen Heyman. Mr. Heyman, please.
Yes, thank you. As my
you know I am a rude moderator, please.
Yeah, I see. Yes, let's not use buzzwords, but try to come very concrete talk. In fact, the EU trade policy is not just on commercial interest. It deals with sustainable development, which includes the labor and human rights, environmental issues, but also fair pricing and ethic trade. I just bring to your attention that also there is an initiative running now in the Commission to launch an initiative on garment.
Would you kindly take closer?
Which take especially these aspects into account regarding the value chain, analysis of the value chain, and looking how EU can position to that. I think all these principles which we apply in the EU trade policy and which is also reflected in our preferential scheme, especially also taking into account the core human rights values and labor rights, it's treated to all countries. That now Bangladesh is on the radar is clear. Rana Plaza took place here, but also you had a very successful trade with the EU. You have 65%, so 2/3 of all EBA trade to Europe comes from Bangladesh. So, of course, there is high attention on Bangladesh. But the principles are clear, and we apply these principles to all countries. So now, somebody said it's a crucial year. Yes, it's indeed a crucial year, because there are large concerns, especially on freedom of association of workers and respect of labor rights. There are concerns, and we as representatives, we have to demonstrate to European Parliament, to the Minister of Council Ministers, and also to the civil society that something takes place here in this country on these issues. So, in this year, there are the meeting of ILO in June. Before, there is a meeting on a review of the Sustainability Compact on 18th of May. These are the events where, in fact, progress has to be demonstrated. Otherwise, you run a risk that inspections are undertaken, special inspections, to review, in fact, the regime. And as you know, it can happen that a temporary withdrawal from a preferential scheme can be considered if there are serious and systematic violations of labor rights. So to avoid this, the government, and I address here mainly to the government, has to undertake its homework, and this is mainly things which were addressed in the ILO conference on the legal framework, but also violations against unionists should be pursued. And another point is also that the registration of unions should not be hampered, only if there are clear reasons for failing the conditions should be clearly mentioned. So these are very concrete things which should be put into place. And on this, I think these are short-term issues which we can discuss. On the longer, then comes these other issues which you mentioned, on which European Union will also formulate a policy. Thank you.
But would you collaborate with ILO and us over here to address the value chain and its rationality and its appropriateness for a more just and fair trading system? I would concretely put you a question then, that will you in fact make this into an issue where we can put the basic information and responses on the table?
Okay. I'm a representative here of the EU, but the policy is done in our headquarters and formulated in the headquarters, and I mentioned just that this is now in the making, especially on the garment. So once we have the policy guidance, then of course we can enter on the basis of this in discussion with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
আপনারা যারা ওনার কথা শুনেছেন, ওনার পুরো জিনিস শোনার দরকার নেই, একটাই শুধু লাইন আমি আপনাদের শোনাচ্ছি, সেটা হলো 18 মে যে পুনর্বিবেচনা বা এটা যে রিভিউ মিটিং হবে, সেখানে থেকে যদি ফলাফল নেতিবাচক হয় তাহলে বাংলাদেশের যে রপ্তানি আছে ইউরোপিয়ান ইউনিয়নের বাজারে এবং সেখানে যে শুল্কমুক্ত সুবিধা আমরা পাই তার উপর সাময়িক স্থগিতাদেশ আসারও আশঙ্কা আছে। এই কথাটি উনি বলতে চেয়েছেন অন্যান্য আরও আলোচনার ভিতরে। Let me invite somebody who represents totally the different other sector. We have the representatives of the H&M over here, the buyers. Where are the colleagues? I have the name of Mr. Daria Ural and Kiran Kokachoti. Huh? Please raise your hands. Come in. Please, any of you want to come in at this point? The role of the international buyers are coming up. I know you are intermediary. You are not exactly the final retail end, but still, would you like to make some points on all the observations made? Role of the international value chain and the fairness of the deals?
Yeah, I think what's more important. I can do that.
Without giving away the commercial secrets, don't jeopardize your job. Just say something.
Okay. I think it's very important that there is a social the dialogue which happens between the employer and the employee. That's what we look at. For that, I don't see much of investment required. If there is a dialogue that has to be done in a factory level, on an enterprise level, I don't see costs coming into this fact. I think that is something beyond this discussion that has to take place. That should happen in a different forum.
অনেক ধন্যবাদ। উনি বলছেন যে এই আলোচনাটা প্রতিষ্ঠান কারখানা ভিত্তিক আলোচনা হতে হবে, তাহলে অনেক বেশি উপর। আপনারা শুনেছেন যে রেজাল্ট এখানে প্লেস করা হয়েছে, তার ভিতরে ফ্যাক্টরি লেভেল ম্যানেজমেন্টের কথা এখানে বিভিন্নভাবে আনা হয়েছে। I will bring in now Franziska Korn from Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. You may like to also respond to Asif's point that the workers are losing interest in trade union in the developed countries. And Germany still has the strongest trade union movement as far as I understand.
Yes, thank you very much. And I would very much like also to respond to the trade union movement in Germany and to say a few words about this. But before that, I think it's a very important point that being here the director of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation in Bangladesh, coming from a foreign country, coming from Germany, it's really important that on the day of Rana Plaza, definitely that we did discuss and that we do discuss the responsibility of all the countries, including a country like Germany. So I very much value this point and I very much appreciate this kind of discussion. And I think there are some initiatives that take into consideration the responsibility of the buyers' countries, even though we have such an intransparency in the global supply chain. One example is, for instance, the law that has just recently passed in France, which is a law on multinational companies, and is saying that multinational companies have to actually have a plan, have transparency, and have to invest in their own transparency in the global supply chain. What can happen otherwise if this is not done by multinational companies, and for sure, unfortunately, so far only very huge multinational companies are taken into consideration. But if this is not done, then workers, trade unions here in the countries, with the support of others, can actually sue these multinational companies in France, for instance, and they have to pay quite a huge amount then. So I think it's one thing, and I know this law is also criticized by the trade union movement because it's weak in some sense and so on and so on. But I think we should not deny the fact that also in Europe there is a strong trade union movement, there are strong trade union-oriented organizations, and they are trying to push initiatives that are really taking in consideration that responsibility has to taken also part in Germany, has also taken part in Europe. And I think it's really important that we also transfer that these initiatives are at least we are starting it. And I see our huge responsibility. However, so this is one point I think really important to acknowledge here, that things are trying to be done in countries like Germany and others. However, I think we all are aware, or the most that are very much focusing in this area, working in this area, that there are, for instance, studies. One very important study is done by the Penn State University from the US, showing that even after a court, the price rate has not gone up. So exactly what our honorable guests on the panel here are saying is that even though Germany, other countries, Europe is demanding actually more compliance in Bangladesh, we see, and I'm very happy to see that we also have brands representatives here, we see that the price rate is not higher now. Okay, so I'm making this point that this is acknowledged also in Germany. Then Germany, I have to say something about the workers' movement in Germany. So I think it's really important. Germany has a long tradition in the trade union movement. So it took us quite a long time, more than 100 years, also to make the point that trade unions are very important. And it was actually the financial crisis where we really saw that trade unions can matter. And I think it's really important also to allow here the way that it takes time that trade unions can function. And we do not see actually that trade unions are getting less important in Germany, especially the elections are coming up in Germany in September, and we see that workers and elections are more and more important. Thanks.
Well made. Thank you very much. আমি আর কোনো ট্রান্সলেশনে যাচ্ছি না। বাবুল আক্তার, শ্রমিক নেতা, গার্মেন্টস, আসেন। আমি এখন কিছু শ্রমিক নেতাদের আনবো। নাজমা এরপরে।
ধন্যবাদ সিপিডিকে আজকের এই প্রোগ্রামটা।
ধন্যবাদ লাগবে না, পয়েন্টে
আসলে রানা প্লাজার পরে আমাদের যেটা হয়েছে যে আমরা রানা প্লাজা থেকে আমরা অনেক কিছু শিক্ষা পেয়েছি। বিশেষ করে সরকারেরও এই বিষয়ে কি করতে হবে তারাও বুঝতেছে, মালিকদেরও বুঝতেছে, এবং আমরা ট্রেড ইউনিয়নের নেতা যারা আছে তারাও বুঝতেছি। আসলে রানা প্লাজা একদিকে যারা মরে গেছেন তারা বেঁচে গেছেন, কিন্তু রানা প্লাজার পরে এত মিটিং সেমিনার যা হচ্ছে তার চাইতে শ্রমিকদের উন্নয়নের জন্য অনেক কম হচ্ছে। ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন নিয়ে যদি আমি কথা বলতে, এখানে এক ভাই বলছিলেন যে আমেরিকাতে বিভিন্ন জায়গায় ট্রেড ইউনিয়নের পার্সেন্টেজ কমে যাচ্ছে। আসলে ওই সমস্ত জায়গায় শ্রমিকদের তাদের যে সুযোগ সুবিধা আছে আমাদের মনে হয় সেইটাও আমাদের মনে করা উচিত। আমাদের দেশের এখনো অনেক কারখানা আছে যেখানে ভালো সুযোগ সুবিধা আছে, তারা ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন করতে আসে না। কিন্তু আপনারা একদিকে দিবেন না, আরেকদিকে বলবেন।
এক মিনিট, সবাইকে ভালো সুযোগ সুবিধা দিলে ট্রেড ইউনিয়নের দরকার করবে
না। আমি আসতেছি
না,
আমি এটা আসতেছি। তো সেখানে আপনারা এইটা বলবেন, আরেকদিকে বলবেন না, তা না। অতএব ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন দরকার আছে, সামাজিক ডায়ালগ দরকার আছে। আমি সর্বশেষ আশুলিয়ার ঘটনা বলতে চাচ্ছি যে যেখানে
একটা ফেডারেশন গার্মেন্টসের জন্য
আপনি যদি সেটা বলেন, আপনি যদি বলেন যে অন্যান্য দেশেও কিন্তু একটা ফেডারেশন না, আমি যদি আপনাকে ক্রস করি, আপনি আমেরিকা বলেন, যেখানে বলেন, সেখানে একটা ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন ফেডারেশন না, সেখানে একাধিক ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন ফেডারেশন রয়েছে। আপনি বাংলাদেশে একটা চাচ্ছেন কেন? এটা গণতন্ত্র
সেক্টর ভিত্তিক।
আচ্ছা, সেক্টর ভিত্তিক একটা করবে, সেটা আইন কভার করতে হবে, সেটা আইনকে দেখতে হবে। আচ্ছা, যাই হোক, আমি আমার বক্তব্যে চলে আসি। যদি এই ধরনের কোনো আইন হয়, একটা সেক্টরিয়াল একটা ফেডারেশন হবে, সেটা দেখতে হবে। আপনার অবগতির জন্য বলি, বাংলাদেশে এখন পর্যন্ত কোনো একটা কনফেডারেশনই তৈরি হয়নি, এবং সেটা তৈরি না হওয়ার পিছনে অনেক কারণ আছে, সেটা নিয়ে আমরা আজকের কথা বলবো না। তো আমাদের আরো পরিবর্তন দরকার। রানা প্লাজা আমাদের যেভাবে একটা ওয়েক আপ কল দিয়ে গেছেন, সেখান থেকে আমাদের শিখতে হবে, এবং এখান থেকে আমাদের আরো অনেক কিছু জানতে হবে। তাহলে আমাদের এই সমস্যা থেকে আমরা উত্তরণ হতে পারবো। যদি আমরা রানা প্লাজার শিক্ষাটাকে যদি কাজে না নিয়ে আসি, তাহলে কিন্তু আমাদের সামনের দিকে আমরা যেতে পারবো না। আমি আরো একটু বলতে চাই, সেটা হলো যে আমরা এখনো কিন্তু একটি জায়গায় আটকে আছি, আমরা মন থেকে কিছু করি না। যখনই বিদেশিরা বলে, যখনই বিভিন্ন জায়গা থেকে চাপ সৃষ্টি হয়, যখনই এই ধরনের হয়, তখনই আমরা অনেক ট্রেনিং, সেমিনার, রাউন্ড টেবিল, সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগ আমরা বলে এগুলো পার করতে চাই। আমাদের এটাকে টেকসই করতে হলে আমাদের মনের পরিবর্তন দরকার। এটা সরকারের দরকার প্রথম, মালিকদের দরকার প্রথম। আমি সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগ নিয়ে একটু বলতে চাই, সেটা হলো আসলে আমাদের সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগ ফেল করছে। আসলে আমাদের সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগ ফেল করছে। আমরা সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগে গিয়েছি, মন্ত্রী মহোদয়রা ডাকছে, আমরা সেখানে গিয়েছি, পুলিশ মহোদয়রা ডাকছে, সেখানে গেছি। লাস্টের সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগের কথা বলে, ব্রেকফাস্টের কথা বলে নিয়ে যেয়ে তাদেরকে গ্রেফতার করেছেন। অথবা আমাদের এখন খুলতে হবে, সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগ যদি ফেল হয়, তাহলে কি মেকানিজম আছে আমাদের সেটা বাইর করতে হবে। সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগ আমরা বুঝি, এটা সুন্দর একটা ওয়ার্ড, এটা সামাজিক সংলাপ, এর থেকে সুন্দর কোনো অর্থই হয় না। কিন্তু এটা যদি ফেল হয়, তারপর আমরা কি করবো, এইটা নিয়ে আমাদের এখন আসলে কথা বলা উচিত।
Thank you very much.
ধন্যবাদ।
Babul is making the point that they were invited to a breakfast and for a social dialogue, and then they were arrested from that meeting. So if that fails, what they are going to do? Okay, Najma.
Thank you, moderator and chairperson and distinguished guest. Actually, we are not fighting today. It's not the right time, because on 18 May we have compact meeting. Also the 1st of June we have ILO International Conference in Geneva, and what the Srinivas said and what the European Union said, that is the point, how we have to progress and how we have to do the issues in our country, the amendment, the law, freedom of association, in the EPZ, unfair labor practices, the union registration, and Ashulia issues. These are the 5 issues, the key issues in Bangladesh. So that is why we are not in trial. Almost more than 30 years we are in this sector. So how we have to overcome these issues and how we have to run the proper business in our country, because in whole supply chain has the corruption, whole supply chain need to be the fair business and fair practices. That is the things that we need to be done, and that is why we need to more capacity build the workers, the manufacturer, as well as the government. We all are failure. So in this regard, as a worker, we need freedom of association, collective bargaining, and living with respect and dignity, and we need to save the Bangladesh industry, and how we have to overcome the GSP issue, and Bangladesh is a golden gold or something like that kind of things, not to fight for the participation committee, not fighting for the union. This country is our, and how women workers should be get the respect and leadership position. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Najma. Let me bring in some of the government people over here who are present here. I have Mr. Samsul Zaman Bhuya, the Inspector General of DIFE, Director of Factory Inspections. Please, Mr. Bhuya.
Assalamu alaikum.
এখানে তো যা আলোচনা হচ্ছে তার অনেক কিছু আপনার কাছে যে বর্তা, you are the head of the factory inspection.
সেক্ষেত্রে আমি আই লাইক টু স্পিক ইন বাংলা
প্লিজ।
রানা প্লাজা ইনসিডেন্সের পর অ্যাকর্ড এবং অ্যালায়েন্সের পাশাপাশি ন্যাশনাল ইনিশিয়েটিভের মাধ্যমে আমরা 1549টি কারখানাকে প্রাইমারিলি অ্যাসেসমেন্ট করেছি। এই প্রাইমারি অ্যাসেসড কারখানাগুলোর রিমেডিয়েশনের জন্যে ইন দ্য মিন টাইম উই হ্যাভ ডেভেলপড এ আরসিসি। Under this RCC, there are 2 task forces, one for structural and another for fire and electrical. For assisting the owner of those building, in the meantime we have selected 26 engineering farm for structural purpose, and we have shortlisted 20 engineering firm for fire electrical purpose. এছাড়াও আমরা যেটা করছি যে এই আরসিসি কাজের সাথে সরকারি 5টি ডিপার্টমেন্ট জড়িত আছে আন্ডার দ্য লিডারশিপ অফ ডিআইএফই. These are FSCD, Public Works Department, Raju, Chief Inspector's Office Electrical, and চিটাগাংয়ের ক্ষেত্রে রাজুকের পরিবর্তে চট্টগ্রাম ডেভেলপমেন্ট অথরিটি. এই সময়ের মধ্যে ফ্যাক্টরি ওনাররা নিজেদের উদ্যোগেই 21%
let me put we know all these things because they're going to I'm just asking one question. এই সময়কালে আপনার ক্যাপাসিটি বেড়েছে কিনা? আপনার যাদের রিক্রুট করার কথা ছিল ইন্সপেক্টরস এন্ড এটসেট্রা, আপনি আগের চেয়ে সবল হয়েছেন কিনা? Do you have now more capacity since Rana Plaza?
Obviously we have got more strength before directorate period. We have got 224 inspectors through Bangladesh Public Service Commission. Now 310 inspectors are working in our department.
And they are getting government salary?
Yes, they are getting government salaries, and we have conducted many training for strengthening them. We have also developed a detailed checklist for inspecting our
database.
We do yet develop any database, but we are preparing to develop a database regarding our factory and also workers also. And another issue has been raised here, that is regarding 1,000 unassessed factory buildings. We have placed a proposal before our development partner, that is ILO, for assisting us regarding this factory assessment, but they did not accept our proposal. Now we have preparing a DPP for assess this building, getting financial assistance from our government side.
Good, thank you very much. Let me invite here Brigadier General Ali Ahmed Khan, Director General of Bangladesh Fire Service and Civil Defence. Maybe you will tell us why no Rana Plaza will occur anymore in this country.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think for also thanks CPD for inviting me in this social dialogue program. I'd like to brief a few points regarding the fire safety and also some way forward, actually, because the time is very short. As you know that after having the Rana Plaza and also the Thursday incident, there was, I think, big vacuum, and there's a big gap, I think, and the government and all the agencies, they are really working hard to develop the overall fire safety and the electrical safety. In this regard, I must appreciate the ILO, who really came up with the project that is I think, improving the fire and the general building safety in Bangladesh under the US Department of Labor, and where a lot of stakeholders are working together. Through this effort, a significant headway has been made in building the capacity of the fire service civil defense, and the fire service civil defense is now well on its way in realizing its goal, I think, and modernizing its and having the capacity to provide the service to the societies in large. I think significant workforce work has been also underway to help create a more and the solid regulatory foundation upon which the future safety effort has been also built. The project has also contributed generally for harmonizing inspection standards and also remediation protocols for RMG sectors. In the aftermath of the Rana Plaza, I think the work has been also work is vitally important, as a number of the initiatives sought to rapidly carry out the inspections of RMG factories for the structural, electric and the fire safety. Responsibility for long-term safety for RMG sectors must be lie in the hands of the relevant government authorities, and also the coordination with the various authorities is vital also. The fire service civil levels of the department inspectors and factories there is DIFE also engaged in the national task force had in charge with the follow-up, the preliminary assessment of the garment sectors. And this is very positive steps, and it is our hope that in this collaborative approach is serve a foundation for further cooperation embracing
Thank you,
the
General.
other regulatory authorities.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Let me invite Jakob Hoggett, the Deputy Head of the Danish Mission here in Dhaka.
Thank you very much.
এই যে ভাই আপনি টেলিফোনটা নিয়ে বাইরে একটু আসেন, কথা বলবেন না এখানে।
I think we're talking here at the fourth anniversary of the Rana Plaza Tragedy. I would like to express the commitment from the Danish government to remain a firm partner. We'd like to continue our engagement to support both a safe and a safe, secure and sustainable RMG sector. Also, the Danish private sector would like to remain engaged. Talking with the Danish business leaders, they have expressed clear commitment also to continue. But what can they provide? Well, they're asking for stable and well-functioning working environments. And how can you get that? Well, by investing in capacity building of the participation committees, but also by investing in capacity development of unions, both at the factory level and at the national level. And this could sound a bit odd that this message comes from the Danish private sector, but they actually believe that well-functioning unions are important, not just because they love unions, but because they can lead to a more stable and durable solutions at the labor market. So that's one thing. Another thing, what can we do as a government entity here? We can share our own experiences, what has worked in Denmark. And there is social dialogue and genuine dialogue between union representatives and employers have shown to be useful. But it's not enough just to have dialogue. You need to have a framework for that dialogue. So you need to institutionalize the social dialogue, not just to have a few ad hoc projects and discussions here and there. There has to be a national framework. Thank you.
One question to you. Any answer?
You take it under advisement.
Yes. Well, I think the topic of today is social dialogue, so not fair prices.
Let me invite Ambassador Farooq Subhan.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up on a point made by the Canadian High Commissioner and also by Najma, whom I don't see anymore in her chair. My question is really to the Labour Secretary and to Mr. Reddy. With 18th May and June round the corner, what is happening regarding the 4 points raised by the ILO and endorsed by the EU, which we need to address? And in this connection, I want to ask the Labour Secretary, are we ready to move towards a single labour law? And what will be the labour law applied to the 100 special economic zones? Will they have their own labour law? So we'll end up with 5 different labour laws at last count. I have 2 recommendations. One is, as someone who travels extensively abroad, the image of Bangladesh is still has been deeply affected by Rana Plaza. We need to have these social dialogues outside the country, particularly in Europe and particularly in the US. And that is one way we might be able to influence the major buyers into addressing the issue of price. And a lot of importance has been given to skills development. I think an integral part of skills development in the labor industry, in the RMG sector, should be focused on the issue of a host of problems arising out of Rana Plaza and its aftermath. I think that should be built into the training program, especially for mid-level managers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think these are very good suggestions, and I have passed on your questions to the Labour Secretary, that whether we are going to have uniformity of labour law, and now we have the differences between EPZ and the other domestic tariff area, and in the future, when we go into special economic zones, both in private sector and to specific countries, whether we are going to have another set of labour law for those areas or not. So that's another set of issues which we have. Vidya is the entrepreneur, Vidya Khan from the Desh Garments.
Afternoon. I'd just like to know today, here in this room, how many entrepreneurs are there?
Pardon?
How many entrepreneurs? How many garments factory manufacturers? Myself, I think Babu Bhai and Arif over there, Asif Bhai over there.
Are you counting quantity or quality?
Quantity.
Okay.
Quantity. Because over here, I'm sure, with representatives from the other sectors, there is also a question of quantity and quality.
We invited 20 people, and that's the best we could get.
Of course. The only problem is that, you know, it is true that many of us do not come. And over and over, I mean, even in BGMEA, for instance, the people who have more successful factories who do not have problems of labor issues or payment and anything like that, they do not come. And it's a question of trying to find out why we do not want to be more involved in social dialogue such as this. To sort of refer to your point, you said this is about social dialogue and not fair prices. But in many cases, fair prices then allows the successful results of what we discuss in a social dialogue. All that I want to say today is that it kind of makes me sad to think that there is so much attention on what we manufacturers do not give, what we do not allow for our workers, the advantages that we do not, the fair prices or wages that we do not give. I would like to see for a change that there is a social dialogue on what us manufacturers do for the workers and the problems that we do face. And then only I think that this bridge can be gapped. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fair point that we need to also have a positive rendition of the social dialogues in this case. Not because Vidya mentioned that how many entrepreneurs are here, I would have anyway invited Fazlu Bhai. Why Narayanganj is so special? Our former president of the BKMA.
Thank you.
So what you are doing special in Narayanganj that you have so many industrial actions?
I have other point to...
No, other points is, but whatever is, but...
No, Narayanganj is special, not only Narayanganj. I believe Narayanganj, Chittagong and Dhaka city part, where the owners are from this particular place, that are the same. I have a long explanation on that, but Mojim Bhai correctly pointed out these three areas. Even if you see the Dhaka city is almost free from any violence, because owners are from the local community. There are a big explanation, time is limited, but the point I would like, I plan to mention the sourcing countries dialogue. And it is a social dialogue, but you see that people are trying to avoid the social dialogue, and the question raised by the chairman that what the equal distribution of the value chain, $5 t-shirt or $5 shirt being sold $25 or $30, and nobody is ready to touch on this point, either it is buyer or the buyer's country, nobody. And we saw in last 1.5 decade, from where I involved in this leadership in the industry, that there are two sets of people in a buyer's group. One is from the compliance and one from the buyers who negotiate the price. When they go to the negotiate price, they tell, I only negotiate the price, I don't bother about the compliance and all other things. When we go to the compliance people, oh, I have no idea about the price. You talk to the buyer. I only see the compliance issues. But you see that the $5, I would like to mention that even within the $5, we the manufacturers have to give all the detailed explanation how my price comes at $4.95, not at $4.75. What is the end price? What is the fabric price? What is the costing of the accessories? What is the labor wages? What is my electricity bill? And how much is my profit? Each and everything. There is a big format of each and every buyer, which they call the open costing. I would like to request only one thing. Buyers don't need to make an open costing, but if they only mention against their selling price, if they put their buying price in their tag, it is a $25 shirt, the buying price was $2, $5, $7. If you can only impose this, I think all the problems will be solved. Thank you.
I think that's a very fantastic way of suggesting bringing more transparency in the global pricing mechanism, that you put the production price in the tag. That is another way of labeling. That's a fair. May I invite Mr. Mahendra from the ILO? Mr. Mahendra?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. I think the issue that's come up around the value chain is an important point. The concern, though, could be that it's taking an extremely narrow view of the situation, and I'm playing devil's advocate here. It could be that there are deeper issues that need to be addressed. So, for example, the issue around trust. A simple mechanism to ensure that parties can engage on an equal platform. Those are issues that go beyond the value chain, and I think that they are equally important in terms of priority. Just a thought to put out there.
Thank you very much for the thought. We will put it. I see a couple of representatives still I have in my list from our development partners. I have Mr. Peter de Vries from the Netherlands Embassy. He just left. Okay. We have Mr. Raushita Emels, First Secretary, German Embassy. Do you have? Okay. One of our participants over here is from the Corporate Social Responsibility Specialist, Simon. Mr. Simon is? Okay. We have Dr. Jasmine Subasat from the Japanese Mission. You want to say, Jasmine? Those who are going to decline to speak, they will become more popular at this moment. Ms. China Rahman from the Women's Workers Federation or Workers? Okay. I have from ILO Mr. Tuomo. No. Mr. Tawhidur Rahman from Bangladesh Poshak Shilpo Shramik Federation. Please, you have 1 minute, sir. Just shoot.
ধন্যবাদ। আমি প্রথমেই একটু বলবো আমার অর্গানাইজারদেরকে, সম্মানিত চেয়ার, 1138 জনের জীবনের বিনিময়ে আজকের এই অর্জন সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগ। কিন্তু আমরা যদি একটু 1 মিনিট দাঁড়িয়ে তাদের শ্রদ্ধা জানাতাম, এই আত্মাগুলো শান্তি পেত। এটা যদি আবার অদূর ভবিষ্যতে এই ধরনের প্রোগ্রাম করেন, একটু চিন্তা করবেন। আমি সেকেন্ডলি বলবো, এই শ্রমিকদের মধ্যে অনেকেই এখনো মেন্টাল ট্রমা, যারা এখনো বিল্ডিং উঠতে ভয় পায়, কারখানায় প্রবেশে ভয় পায়, বেরোতে ভয় পায়, থাকতে ভয় পায়, শব্দে ভয় পায়, এদের ব্যাপারে একটা কাউন্সিলিং প্রয়োজন। আমরা বলবো যে আমরা গতকালও দেখেছি যে ইতিমধ্যে 4 বছরে আপনার 14.5% করে আমরা কর্মজীবনে ফেরত এনেছি শ্রমিকদেরকে যারা অ্যালাইভ ছিল। এখনো 42% তারা বেকার জীবন যাপন করছে। এদেরকে কেন আমরা আরেকটু দ্রুত গতির সাথে আমরা কেন কর্মজীবনে ফিরিয়ে নিতে পারি না, এই বিষয়টি আমাদের বিবেচনায় নেওয়া দরকার। 2টি মামলা হয়েছে, মামলার বিচার কার্য এখনো শুরু হয়নি। এটাও যদি সরকার বিবেচনা না নেন, অনেক বিচারই আমার এই সরকার করেছে, এই বিচারটা আমরা দেখতে চাই। ক্ষতিপূরণের একটি জাতীয় মানদণ্ড থাকা প্রয়োজন। আমরা টেম্পাকোকে যদি ভুলে যাই, ভুল হবে। 2.5 ফিট বাই 2 ফিট একটা জানলা ফ্যাক্টরি পরিচালনা করেছেন। তা আমি বলবো এটাও আমাদের আনা দরকার। আর সবশেষে বলবো, আমরা ইপিজেডে কোনো অন্য আইন চাই না, একই দেশে এক আইন থাকতে হবে। হ্যাঁ, ইপিজেড যখন হয়েছিল একটা ভিন্নতর পরিবেশে ওই ধরনের বিদেশি বিনিয়োগকারীদের সুযোগ দেওয়ার জন্যই আপনার ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন ফ্রি করা হয়েছিল। কিন্তু এখন সময় এসেছে আমার বাংলাদেশি উদ্যোক্তা, বিদেশি উদ্যোক্তা একসাথে চলবে, এক আইনে তারা স্মরণ করবে, এটা আমাদের দাবি। সকলকে ধন্যবাদ।
থ্যাংক ইউ ভেরি মাচ ফর দোজ পয়েন্টস ইন দ্যাট। আমি আরেকজন শ্রমিক নেতাকে, মোহাম্মদ ফজল হোসেন, সভাপতি বাংলাদেশ সংযুক্ত শ্রমিক ফেডারেশন, আছেন?
জি
হ্যাঁ, বল। সংক্ষেপে একদম।
শ্রমিকের মর্যাদা, ইউনিয়ন গঠন, দর কষাকষির মৌলিক অধিকার, নিরাপদ কর্মস্থল, স্বাস্থ্যসম্মত পরিবেশ সহ সকল মৌলিক অধিকার সমূহকে ইচ্ছাকৃতভাবে লঙ্ঘন করার ফলে
একটু কাছে নিয়ে বলেন, শোনা যাচ্ছে না।
রানা প্লাজার ধস হয়েছে, যেটা বিশ্বকে কাঁদিয়েছে। আমরা আজ আমাদের মাথাকে আমরা পরিষ্কার করেছি, আমরা যারা শ্রমিক রাজনীতি করি, শ্রমিক আন্দোলন করি, আমাদের মাথাকে আমরা সংস্কার করেছি। আমরা চাই মালিক পক্ষ যারা আছেন তাদের মাথা সংস্কার হোক, সংস্কার ওনারা করুন, ওনাদের মনোভাব পরিবর্তন করা উচিত। সরকার তার সহানুভূতি পরিপূর্ণভাবে এদিকে আসা উচিত। আর আমরা চাই এই সস্তা দামের শ্রমিক বাংলাদেশে যারা আছে তাদেরকে মূল্যায়ন করা হোক। যারা বায়ার, বিশেষ করে ইউরোপিয়ান ইউনিয়ন, তাদেরকে অনুরোধ করব বাংলাদেশি পণ্য তার দাম সঠিকভাবে দেয়া হোক।
ওকে, আমার মনে হয় অনেক ধন্যবাদ। I think Mr. Tofazzal Hussain is also talking about giving proper appreciation to the workers and also urging the European Union and other members of the market of Bangladesh products to properly value the outputs that way.
Can we do a study if the GSP is removed, what will be the implication of the employment in the RMG sector as well?
Well, I am pretty sure that we will let us wait till 19th, and any study to be done now by CPD will be considered as a premature panic mongering. We have to be a bit careful about that too. But this is definitely a very serious issue which we would like to look at. My last one in my list, Razaul Kobir, Secretary General, Dhaka Chamber.
ধন্যবাদ। আমি বাংলা বলছি বিকজ আমাদের এখানে আমি যে বলবো যে আমরা কালেক্টিভ বার্গেনিং কথা বলছি, যদি আমি আই এম নট অ্যান এন্টারপ্রেনার নট ইভেন আ বিজনেসম্যান, বাট আই এম পলিসি মেকার, ফর্মার সেক্রেটারি। তো আমার মনে হয় যে আমাদের কালেক্টিভ বার্গেনিংটা শুধু যে শ্রমিক নেতা আমাদের এন্টারপ্রেনারদের সাথে করবে না, জাতিগতভাবে ওনারা মিলে যদি আমরা আমাদের যেটা বলছে $20 কোথায় যাচ্ছে আমাদের স্যার যেটা বললেন, সেটার জন্য এখানেই আমাদের ইউনাইটেড হতে হবে। তাহলে মালিক এবং শ্রমিক পক্ষ এক হয়ে যদি বায়ারদের কাছে তুলে ধরতে পারে তাহলে সে $20 হিসাবটা আসবে। থ্যাংক ইউ।
Thank you. I think that's a call for cartelization of the workers and the entrepreneurs. But as much as I know, the entrepreneurs themselves cannot cartelize, they undercut each other, given that various in the price situation. If anybody has anything more to add, otherwise please forever hold your peace. So if not, then thank you very much for, let us give a big hand to those who have made their great contribution in this. I have now in my list 27 persons I have called upon. And let us give a big hand to those who really were there but declined to speak. And I see many luminaries over here, Rashid Maksud Khan and Mirza Azizul Islam, and our board member, Mr. Saidu Zaman, was here, the former finance minister. So let us give a big hand to those who declined to speak for giving us the time. Now let me invite Mr. Babu, Mr. Mahmood Hassan Khan, the Vice President of the BGMEA. You may like to say speak your mind, you may respond, whatever it is, please, this is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator and all the chair, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to concentrate my speech in terms of social dialogue and what BGME is doing regarding social dialogue, and so I'd like to explain this one, and later on I'd like to give some response of some question or clarification. BGMA provides regular training program on Bangladesh labor and labor law 2016 and industrial relation for both factory management and workers. BGMA is a partner in a project launched by Government of Bangladesh, Sweden, Denmark and ILO for promoting social dialogue and harmonious industrial relation in Bangladesh ready-made garment industry project. The government of Bangladesh recently formed the Tripartite Consultative Committee, TCC, to address the labor and workplace related issues in RMG with the participation of government, trade unions and RMG owners. This committee will deal with all unresolved issues, disputes and grievances raised by its parties. To resolve labor disputes, BGMA runs an arbitration committee headed by a retired district judge with representation from 12 worker federation. Since 1998, this arbitration mechanism has resolved 9,565 disputes, collecting 141 million taka from employers and distributing the same among 37,867 workers. Now, how to make successful this social dialogue? আমি এখানে একটু বাংলায় পরিষ্কার করে বলতে চাই যে সোশ্যাল ডায়ালগ নিয়ে যদি আমরা সত্যি সাকসেসফুল হতে চাই তাহলে আমাদেরকে এমন একটা মেকানিজম তৈরি করতে হবে যেটা কার্যকরী হবে, কাগজে কলমে না, প্র্যাকটিক্যালি পসিবল। যেমন বাংলাদেশে গার্মেন্টস সেক্টরে বা পোশাক শিল্পে কতজন ওয়ার্কার কাজ করে, এটা নিয়ে যে সংখ্যাতাত্ত্বিক যে ডিবেট আছে, কেউ বলেন 4 মিলিয়ন, কেউ বলেন 44 লক্ষ, কেউ বলেন 30 লক্ষ, অ্যাকচুয়াল ডাটাবেস আমাদের কাছে নাই। বিজিএমএ কি করছে? বিজিএমএ গত 8 মাস ধরে বায়োমেট্রিক ডাটাবেস নিয়ে কাজ করছে। ইতিমধ্যেই 11 লক্ষের উপরে ওয়ার্কারের ডাটাবেসগুলো নেওয়া হয়েছে। যে সবচেয়ে বড় অভিযোগ বিজিএমএ তথা আমাদের উদ্যোক্তাদের বিরুদ্ধে দেওয়া হয় যে ট্রেড ইউনিয়নের ব্যাপারে আমরা পজিটিভ না। বিষয়টা হচ্ছে আইনগত। বিজিএমএ অথবা এন্টারপ্রেনার পজিটিভ বা নেগেটিভ এটা বিবেচ্য বিষয় হওয়া উচিত না। বিবেচ্য বিষয় হওয়া উচিত আইন আমরা মানছি কিনা। এই অভিযোগকে খণ্ডানোর জন্য 2013 সালে যে শ্রম আইন হয়েছে সেই শ্রম আইনে কিন্তু ওয়ার্কার পার্টিসিপেশন কমিটি করা হয়েছে এবং সেখানে বলা হয়েছে এই কমিটিটা ইলেক্টেড হতে হবে, নট সিলেক্টেড। আগে যেটা ছিল সিলেকশন, এখন সেটা হবে ইলেকশন এবং এই ইলেকশন প্রসেসটা ওপেন হবে। সেখানে বিজিএমএ এর প্রতিনিধি, সরকারের প্রতিনিধি, আইএলও প্রতিনিধি, শ্রমিক সংগঠনগুলো সবাই উপস্থিত থাকতে পারবে। তো আমরা কখনোই বলি না যে ওয়ার্কার্স পার্টিসিপেশন কমিটি হচ্ছে ট্রেড ইউনিয়নের বিকল্প, কিন্তু যদি কোনো প্রতিষ্ঠানের শ্রমিক ভাই বোনেরা ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন করতে আগ্রহী না হন, তার বিকল্প ব্যবস্থা হিসেবে থাকবে হলো ওয়ার্কার্স পার্টিসিপেশন কমিটি। পরবর্তীকালে এই ওয়ার্কার্স পার্টিসিপেশন কমিটি যদি ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন করতে চান, কোনো বাধা নাই, করতে পারেন। এইসব বিষয়গুলো নিয়ে রিসার্চ হতে পারে। এখানে যে জিনিসটা আমি সিপিডির কাছে অনুরোধ করতে চাই, দুইটা বিষয় নিয়ে রিসার্চ হতে পারে। একটা হচ্ছে এই এখন পর্যন্ত বাংলাদেশে পোশাক শিল্পে 591টা ট্রেড ইউনিয়নের রেজিস্ট্রেশন হয়েছে। এই 591 ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন রেজিস্ট্রেশন হওয়ার পরে তার মধ্যে এই মুহূর্তে মাত্র 260টা ফ্যাক্টরি চলছে, বাকিগুলা বন্ধ হয়ে গেছে। কেন বন্ধ হয়ে গেছে? এটা নিয়ে ভালো গবেষণা হইতে পারে। আর ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন শ্রমিকরা চান কি চান না সেটাও একটা বিবেচ্য বিষয় হতে পারে। বাবুল আক্তার একটা কথা বলে ফেলেছেন, যেসব ফ্যাক্টরিতে ভালো পরিবেশ আছে সেসব ফ্যাক্টরি শ্রমিকরা ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন চান না। ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন চাইলেও বিজিএমএর কোনো সমস্যা নাই, না চাইলেও কোনো সমস্যা নাই। বিজিএমএ আইনের দ্বারা যে নির্ধারিত নিয়মকানুন আছে সেটা স্ট্রিক্টলি ফলো করতে চান। এক্ষেত্রে
let me repeat the number you have just said.
Number of trade union?
591 trade unions registered
in garment sector.
In garment sector. Out of which 260 are working. 260 factories are closed down.
260 factories are running.
260 are running, and then it means 231 have closed down.
Closed down.
And 231 have closed down after the registration of the trade unions.
After the registration of trade union.
You are ascribing to the trade union.
I said, Ms. Nazma, I said this could be a resource. I did not say this. আমি যেটা বলছি এটা নিয়ে গবেষণা হইতে পারে কেন বন্ধ হয়ে গেল।
I think the point is well taken. He has put 3 numbers in front of us and given us the task to look into it, how much it is related to trade union or how much it is related to something else. So he is not making a conclusion here.
Yes.
Thank you for alerting.
And then one more thing is regarding value chain. There could be research. So why this $20? Where this $20 going? এটা নিয়ে বিজিএমএ তে কাজ হচ্ছে। যেটা খুব জনপ্রিয় বক্তব্য যে বায়ারদেরকে বেশি প্রাইস দিতে হবে। আমি একই কথা যদি বলি, আমিও অন্যদের মতো এখানে ভালো ক্ল্যাপিংস পাইতে পারি, বাস্তবতা হচ্ছে ভিন্ন। বায়াররা বেশি পয়সা দিবে না, ইট ইজ বিজনেস প্রপোজিশন। আপনি বায়ারদেরকে বেশি পয়সার জন্য প্রেশার ক্রিয়েট করবেন, বায়াররা ইথিওপিয়াতে যাওয়ার জন্য আমাদেরকে চাপ দিবে। তা ইথিওপিয়াতে থাকবো নাকি বাংলাদেশে ভালো করে ডেভেলপ করব, সেই বিষয়ে আমাদের কাজ করতে হবে এবং এটাও গবেষণার একটা ভালো বিষয়। সমস্যা হচ্ছে আমাদের যেসব কম্পিটিটিভ কান্ট্রি তারা কি দিচ্ছে, তাদের গভর্নমেন্ট বেটার প্যাকেজ দিচ্ছে। আই এম নট টকিং অ্যাবাউট ফিসক্যাল ইনসেন্টিভ, আই এম টকিং অ্যাবাউট আদার ইনসেন্টিভ। বাংলাদেশের নিয়ার ফিউচারের সবচেয়ে বড় কম্পিটিটর হবে ইন্ডিয়া। ইন্ডিয়ার যে টেক্সটাইল পলিসি হচ্ছে স্টেট টু স্টেট, তাতে আপনি ইনভেস্ট করলে ভার্চুয়ালি কোনো ইন্টারেস্ট দিতে হবে না, 1 পয়সা ইন্টারেস্ট দিতে হবে না। এই টেক্সটাইল পলিসি অলরেডি পাবলিশ, এটা ওয়েবসাইটে আছে, আপনারা চাইলে দেখতে পারেন। অন দ্য আদার হ্যান্ড গার্মেন্টস সেক্টরে ভারত কী করছে, উড়িষ্যার মতো অথবা মধ্যপ্রদেশের মতো প্রদেশে যেখানে তাদের লেবার সস্তা, সেখানে তারা গার্মেন্টসকে প্রমোট করছে এবং স্টেট গভর্নমেন্ট 3 বছরের জন্য প্রতিটা শ্রমিককে 1500 রুপি করে দিবে 3 বছর। এই ধরনের প্রতিযোগিতা আসছে। সো এইসব বিষয় নিয়েও সরকারকে কাজ করতে হবে। আমরা সাধারণ বলতে চাই,
the second proposition for research is to do a comparative incentive study with India and Ethiopia and others and see whether you can facilitate on that part instead of going for a business model which is possibly will sound nice but not possibly is possible to pressurize the buyers in and getting more higher prices. Yes. Okay.
One more thing, যেটা খুব বেশি অনেকের কাছে আমাদের বিশেষ করে আমাদের যারা ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন অ্যাক্টিভিটিস নিয়ে কাজ করেন, আর একটা বিষয় নিয়ে আমরা এখন কাজ করছি। আমরা মনে করি বিজিএম এর এই কার্যক্রমের সাথে সবার একসাথে কাজ করা উচিত। সেটা হচ্ছে ট্রেড ইউনিয়নের যে অ্যাক্টিভিটি চলছে, এখন পর্যন্ত বাংলাদেশে ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন সাকসেসফুল হয় নাই। এটার জন্য আপনার সেক্টরাল ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন নিয়ে আমরা কাজ করতে পারি। সেক্টরাল ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন মানে একটা ফেডারেশন না, ইন্ডিভিজুয়াল ফ্যাক্টরিতে ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন হবে। সেই ট্রেড ইউনিয়নগুলোর মাধ্যমে রিজনাল একটা ফেডারেশন থাকবে, রিজনাল ফেডারেশনের মাধ্যমে কনফেডারেশন হইতে পারে। আমাদের উদ্দেশ্য হচ্ছে গ্রিভেন্স মেকানিজমটা যেন ট্রান্সপারেন্ট হয়। এটা নিয়ে ভবিষ্যতে আমরা কাজ করতে পারি। আজকে এই পর্যন্তই, সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you very much. That was a very candid observation. Thank you very much and giving us some responses on that. So let me invite the Honorable Secretary of Labour Ministry, who had been with us for, I think, 4th consecutive year along with that. And he is also chairing currently the advisory committee to the garment study which CPD is conducting. So, Mr. Mikhail Schipper.
Good afternoon. I think everybody is hungry.
Hungry for your words, sir.
Thank you. Honorable Chair, Excellencies, distinguished guests, and others, let me start with আমাদের আগামী 24শে এপ্রিল তারিখে রানা প্লাজাতে ধ্বংস হতে যায় 1136 জনের ইন্তেকাল করেছিলেন। তার আগে এবং পরে গার্মেন্টস সেক্টরে বা বিভিন্ন সেক্টরে যারা ইন্তেকাল, তাদের সবার আত্মার প্রতি মাগফিরাত কামনা করে আমি আমার বক্তব্য শুরু করছি। Distinguished guests, you know, after devastating incident of Rana Plaza, government and other stakeholders has taken various steps regarding the issues of Bangladesh. Sir, with your kind perusal, that with the getting consent from our head of the machineries, that is Prime Minister, we amended our labor laws, promulgate our labor rules, adopted national safety policy. With the help of brands and buyers, we formed Accord and Alliance. We also getting help from Accord and Alliance and other development partners there like Canada, US, UK, and Netherlands. We initiated our assessment of RMG factories, and we have developed our capacity building of DAF and DOL and various other activities. Beside this, we have signed two international agreements. One is Sustainability Compact and another one is US Action Plan. Immediate after Rana Plaza incident, our government, employer, employee, civil society and international community were in same boat. Everything is going on right destination. Now, as a labor secretary, it is our challenge to develop confidence among the workers and the employers. Distinguished participant, you know Bangladesh ratified ILO Convention 144, which is one of the core convention regarding tripartite consultation. We have very big National Tripartite Consultative Committee which deals with the labor issues of different sector of our labor laws. You know, we have at present we have 41 working sector in different stages, like like RMG sector, like shipbuilding sector and other related sector. However, considering the importance of the RMG sector, we have government has developed one tripartite committee for the RMG sector on 12th March of this year. This tripartite committee review the labor situation time to time and advise to the government and other stakeholders for the RMG for the development of RMG employers and workers relation. Beside this, we developed another workers welfare fund exclusively for the export oriented RMG sector with the help of 0.03% FOB value, that is total export value. By this time we accumulate around 40 crore taka in this fund. With this fund we are going to workers and the other beneficiary will get financial incentive and other even protected by the insurance will be borne by this fund. Distinguished guest, for ensuring collective constructive social dialogue, we have also always put emphasis on awareness raising and capacity building of the tripartite constituent to raise awareness on social dialogue in RMG sector. Government of Bangladesh in collaboration with ILO, US DOL, Norwegian government has been implemented different project and training program focusing on social dialogue including collective bargaining, dispute resolution and prevention, conciliation and arbitration. We have recently initiated promoting social dialogue and harmonious industrial relation in Bangladesh RMG industries with the collaboration of the Sweden and Denmark and with the technical support from ILO. By this time our RMG leader has mentioned this work, and under this project the Workers Resource Center will be established which will act as a center of excellence for the workers on training and awareness building. We are looking forward to become middle income group by 2021 and developed country by 2041. The RMG industry has a greater role to play this transformation process. For this, we need a sound industrial relationship in this sector. We have done much to improve social dialogue and labor rights in the RMG sector, but we have to do more. Throughout this journey, we recognize and appreciate the constructive engagement of ILO, development partners, employers and workers organizations, civil society, and we accept them it will not possible for us to step forward. Regarding EPZ Labour Act, in this at present as a Labour Secretary, it is not possible to comment on it as because it is beyond my jurisdiction. It is lying under Prime Minister Office. Yeah, we are trying to convince especially policymaker. One positive issues has been made day before yesterday. Most probably the EPZ law has been withdrawn from the Parliament, and it has gone to the Prime Minister Office for review it again. I hope by this activities we can be able to convince our development partners, especially European Commission, to make them understand our mindset regarding EPZ activities. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. I think one question people would be very curious to know, and if you allow me to ask you that, how prepared are we for the 18th May meeting?
As the Labour Secretary, I am very much confident. Other than EPZ, other three issues we have been addressed, and we will be able to convince our development partners satisfied.
Thank you very much for being so candid and helpful and so open and being with us. For that I greatly appreciate. So I am not going to summarize at all, and I would just ask my chairman to close the meeting.
Thank you. This was a very helpful dialogue, and we thank Muazzam and his colleagues for excellent piece of work. Thank all of you for persevering with us. I would again conclude this by leaving three unasked questions. One, of course, related to the question I was repeatedly raising, that will our international friends be letting us know anytime soon their views on the issue of the international value chain, or does this simply never figure in your conversations? Because that is our grave apprehension, that $5 is all, but $20 goes under the table. Question to the labor leaders. Now, I have been interacting with trade union. Trade unioner সঙ্গে আমার সম্পর্ক 1962 পর্যন্ত চলে যায়, যেখানে আসল ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন দেশে ছিল, খুব শক্তিশালী ট্রেড ইউনিয়ন ছিল। There were the strike in the jute sector যে প্রায় 6 মাস চলল। Now, problem which is going to be with all of you is that as long as we are seeing 20 different faces over here representing different federations, তোমার বুড়ো হয়ে যাব, তোমার উন্নতি হবে না। Until such time as the workers acting through unions can collectively come together, and এই যে আমার বন্ধু বলেছে এখানে কি এক ফেডারেশনের মধ্যে as long as you do not come and argue independently for your workers, not as representatives of the many different parties যাদের তোমার patronize করে রাখে এখানে, you are actually the representatives of the workers who you represent, and you speak with one voice. তোমার কোনো যত হইচই করো এইদিকে ডোনারের কাছে যাও, আমেরিকানের কাছে যাও, AFL, ILO কাছে, কিছু ফসল হবে না। That is the only way you are going to be an equal bargaining partner with the most powerful lobbies in the land. এটা একটু মনে রাখো। Question to both the industry and to the Labour Secretary, a very small question. আপনার তো you have told us about very good things which are being done. As a somewhat older man than you, all I can say is proof of the pudding will be in the eating. তো দেখুন শেষ পথে হয় কি আসলে এইটা দেখা যায় পেপারের উপরে সবই ভালো. Very good, thank you. And
Thank you very much for that.
No, but that's why not. The concrete point is actually what is on the table and what is written in the Factory Act is that all factories and all enterprises are supposed to give 5% of their profit to the worker. Does Ministry of Labour keep a record of this?
Yes.
And
Yes.
do they enforce it as
Yeah.
to which factories have done it? And if they have not done it, then what are you going to do about it?
So I suggest that we carry on with the discussion at the lunch table, which is across the room. Please go ahead, please cross the corridor and join us for the lunch. Thank you very much for being with us.